All right, I'm going to go ahead and call to order this meeting of the Santa Barbara Unified School District's Board of Education for Tuesday, October 10th. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Matsuoka.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Buenas tardes. Si algún miembro del público necesita los aparatos para escuchar la interpretación en español, los tenemos por ese apartado. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. And we also have headsets available for the hearing impaired at our side table here. If there's anybody that needs one, you can request it over there. That brings us to item D5, announcement of closed session action. We took no action in closed session. We will address items C1 and C2 in open session. Bringing us to D6, the superintendent's report. Mr. Matsuoka.
Wanted to share with the board and the community that we had a longtime custodian, Mr. Cavaletto. Anybody remember his first name? Staff. He worked quite a while ago, different generation. He passed away recently. His daughter is Rosa, who is the office manager at Washington. And so she passed that on to us. And I've gotten to know Rosa. She's just a delightful presence at Washington. So I'm going to write her a note because getting a glimpse of her, I can get a glimpse of her father. So let's just pause for a moment of silence for someone who worked for us a generation ago. Thank you. That's it.
All right, board comments and correspondence. Board members, do you have anything to share? All right. We'll move on then to item D8, public comments on non-agenda matters within the jurisdiction of the Board of Education. Dr. Reed?
Yes, and I'm going to read the names of 3 people at a time.
Hold on a second. I just want to be careful because this is not for...
It's public comment.
No, it's public comment on that item.
Oh.
So we'll wait.
We'll wait on these?
Yep.
Okay.
Those are all for when we get to that item.
Okay. So, thank you, Ms. Parker.
You're welcome.
Before I put my foot in my mouth. All right, so we'll move on, but still, we will have 3 people at a time, if they'll come up to the podium, and you will have 3 minutes to speak, and then I am going to say, 30 seconds. So that voice that comes out into the microphone is me telling you to just warn you that you have 30 seconds, and you'll see a flashing light. So, we will start with Brian Gobel. We have Sarah Mayani.
Are you sure these are all on C2?
This is on H6.
Which one is H6? Or, sorry, D8.
H6 is...
Yeah, so we'll wait until then for H6.
You want to wait for that too?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I4 we would wait on. This one we need to hear now, and this one we need to hear now.
Okay, so we have 2. We'll start over. We will have Tommy DeWitt? Tommy DeWitt and Katie Torres. Next 2. Okay, so these speak to.
It's the first 5.
So that's, that was unclear. These speak to that agenda item.
Hello, board members. I'm grateful to be here and to be able to talk to you about a matter that I think is very important to Santa Barbara. I've lived here for many years, and I'm grateful for the many opportunities I've had. I've been fortunate enough to send my atypical learner to private school when I felt at the time that free and appropriate education wasn't possible in the district. Dyslexia is a neurobiological in nature, and it has and a specific learning disability characterized by difficulty with accurate or fluent word recognition and decoding abilities that result in a deficit of phonemic awareness, which you probably don't know much about, but these are the building blocks to reading. The ability to attend to, discriminate, remember, and manipulate sounds at the sentence, word, and phonemic level is typically impaired. So we have here in Santa Barbara recently a population health report survey that also indicated that 20% of our high school graduates drop out. And we also know that dyslexia is in the general population is also 20%. And I'm feeling that this may be a lot of overlap in the same 20%. And I think that this really needs to be addressed because, it was flagged among the population health as well as mental health, but it was flagged as a big indicator and something negative for our community because once somebody doesn't graduate, there's a high percentage of them going to juvenile system, and they just need an intensive intervention, which unfortunately is expensive. But our rights under the IDEA, which is the Individual Disability Education Act, says that these have to be addressed. And these have to be addressed much like if you were to try to build a building here for public access, you would have to make sure it was accessible to everybody. So it might be wider, you might have ramps and things. Well, it's the same with dyslexics. They, by law, this very same way, they have the right to access their education, but for them, they need intensive one-on-one intervention. And so far, as I said, I've been lucky, and I think that I see Santa Barbara in this regard something like a tale of two cities. If you are a parent of some means and some knowledge,
30 seconds.
well, okay, I'll speed this up. You'll get your child in private school, and you might even push the district and get a Linda Mood Bell thing for $10,000. But if you're not, if you don't know your rights, that you'll be left out in the dark. And right now, all we have is a pilot program that takes care of 15 kids. There's 3,000 of them. Also, I think we treat the football players better than the dyslexic. Our parent center should be reopened if we can afford a $38 million football field. And anyway, I think we should also review the
Thank you very
history.
much.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Katie Torres, and I'm with First 5 Santa Barbara County. And I just wanted to share from October 16th to November 20th, First 5 Santa Barbara County is launching a new campaign locally to boost the early brain development and language skills of children across Santa Barbara County from birth to age 5. Almost 60% of American children start kindergarten unprepared, lagging behind in their peers in critical language, math, and social and emotional skills. To address this issue, the Talk, Read, Sing campaign aims to motivate parents and child care providers to talk, read, and sing with young children, like describing objects they see while riding the bus, walking down the street, singing songs, or telling stories. This can build their vocabularies, prepare them for school, and lay a strong foundation for a lifelong learning. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank the Santa Barbara Unified School District, specifically Michelle Robertson, the preschool coordinator, and Renee Hernandez Garcia for being trusted messengers and helping us to share this important message with children and families in your district. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have one more public comment, Dr. Donna Lewis.
I want to say good evening, trustees, Superintendent Matsuoka, staff. I want to introduce myself to you. I am the new superintendent in Goleta Union School District and also a new resident here in Santa Barbara, moving here from the Bay Area. I do happen to know your superintendent a little bit. We go back to in the 90s, we realized, when we were getting our administrative credentials together.
Who would have thought?
Or something. Who would have thought here we'd be today? And as you know, we are one of your partner districts, and we are very proud of our students' accomplishments, and they go on to your district and continue to do well. Our families are very, very happy with what happens here in Santa Barbara Unified. I want you to know that as a partner district, I really value partnerships. I mean this very sincerely from my past experiences. Also, the work in my doctoral degree was all centered on partnerships. So I really want to relay that message to you and let you know that if I can do anything to be of service to you or you, I mean, we're already working together in several capacities. And I just want to carry on a good working relationship between our two districts and also to the Santa Barbara community. So I want to be an involved and caring citizen in this community and just wanted to come say hi and get to see you.
Thank you very much. Yes, probably about half of our secondary students come from our partner districts, and so the role that everybody plays in those districts, it's just a huge effect on the success of Santa Barbara Unified in general, so thank you. Really appreciate you coming. Okay. That brings us to item E. This is acceptance of donations.
I move with gratitude the acceptance of the donations for 2017.
And I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. In the consent agenda, are there any items that need to be removed? Is there a motion to pass the consent agenda as is then?
I move to pass the consent agenda as is.
Second.
That was moved by Dr. Reed and seconded by Mr. Paredes Ulloa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Moving on to our public hearing. So at this time, I'm going to close our meeting of the Santa Barbara Unified School District to go into item G1. This is our second reading and sunshining of Santa Barbara Teachers Association proposal for successor contract negotiations. Stay calm, Ms. Chate. And so, yes, so we're opening the public hearing. And Mr. Matsuoka or Mr. Trina, I don't know if you're addressing this. It says Mr. Trina, so I'm going to believe that.
Thank you, President Parker, board members, and cabinet members. This is the second reading of the sunshining article between Santa Barbara Teachers Association and the Santa Barbara Unified School District. The idea for public hearing is to have any public who has seen this item on our agenda to come up and speak to its content.
Right, and again, it's very bare bones at this time. And having no public comment on this item, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing, move back to our regular meeting, at least briefly. And thank you, Mr. Trina. All right, that moves us on to item H1 on the action agenda. Do we have a speaker on the SBTA contract? Okay, thank you. We are on item H1. This is adoption of resolution number 2017-18-07, authorizing the issuance of the Santa Barbara Unified School District's 2017 General Obligation Refunding Bond, Series A and Series B. Ms. Chate.
Thank you, President Parker. So today we have a resolution to refund approximately $30 million in bond proceeds from 2007 and 2010. I have a chart that shows you, and I'm looking for it on my, shows you exactly the amount of current interest bonds to be refunded and CABs, which are capital appreciation bonds. So you can see that's about $30 million worth of bonds that we're going to be refunding, which will be approximately $10 million over the life of the bonds in savings to our taxpayers. And every chance that we get, we are refunding or refinancing our bonds to eliminate one, CABs, and also a savings to our taxpayers. So with that, I'm hoping that you will approve the resolution 2017-1807.
Board members, any questions on this item? Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
I second it.
Moved by Ms. Sims-Moten and seconded by Dr. Reed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. So at this time, we are doing a unusual maneuver where I am recessing the Santa Barbara Unified School District's Board of Education to move into sort of a different board that Ms. Chate will explain. So I will do so now. Ms. Chate.
Thank you. So this is a little bit odd, but back in 2007, prior to most people being here and our finance team not being slightly different than what it was then. The 2007 bonds were the 1998 bonds were refinanced in 2007. And to do this, they created a Santa Barbara School Financing Authority. And basically what they did is the board sold the bonds to this financing authority, and then the financing authority sold them to the public. So while doing that, back in those days, there was a provision made that we could actually we could get cash out of these refunding. And so we did that, and so did several other districts. Some of our partner districts did too. And then the Attorney General said, whoa, wait a second, we're going to look into this. So the district held on to the money, and we waited until the Attorney General had an opinion. And the opinion was that this was okay, not a problem. And so what we did is we took that money and we put it back into our facilities. So with that being said, this is the last of the Santa Barbara School Financing Authority bonds. And once this transaction takes place when we make the final principal payment, in March, I'm going to bring back the dissolution of the Santa Barbara School Financing Authority so we don't have this ever again. So we had to do this separately because it's like having a little bit of not two boards, but it's a JPA, it's a joint public agency. So we just need to approve the resolution 2017-18-01 to refinance these bonds also and we'll bring back to eliminate the JPA.
So this separate board's agenda is posted outside as
Yes.
well. It's not on this agenda because we're meeting as a separate board right now, even though we're the same board.
And it is on our website.
Yeah. And so the resolution number on this one is 2017/18-01. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. So we are meeting right now as the Santa Barbara Schools Financing Authority. I need a motion to approve resolution number 2017/18-01.
So moved.
I second it.
Moved by Ms. Sims-Moten and seconded by Dr. Reed. All those in favor?
Aye.
That passes 5-0. So at this point, I'm going to adjourn this meeting of the
Thank
Santa
you.
Barbara School Financing Authority.
Thank you.
And we are reconvening the Santa Barbara Unified School District's Board of Education meeting. And we can move on to item H2. This is board action on a petition for readmission of an expelled student, case number 2016-17-07.
All right, in the case of 2016-17-07, I move to accept the reentry from full expulsion for one school year ended June 2017.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. H3, this is board action on student discipline. This is case number 2017-18-04.
So in the case of 2017-18-04, I move to accept the stipulated agreement for expulsion with enforcement suspended for one school year, which ends June 2018.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Bringing us to H4, this is approval of resolution 2017-2018-05 in support of recognition of October as Dyslexia Awareness Month. Mr. Matsuoka.
This resolution is brought to the governing board. October across the country has become Dyslexia Awareness Month. And I would say in my first year as superintendent here, I've become very aware of dyslexia because I've had the community educate me. So thank you for your comments. And it's an issue that we need to solve. And remember last spring when we presented a first plan to tackle dyslexia. So we have a small effort. It's taking place at Harding. And we're going to save a larger report for the board until November in light of the long agenda tonight. And also, we'll have some data about that emerging work. The question of scaling is we talk about it every Friday in our team meeting, because the needs are pretty deep across our district. It's been there, I'd say, parents of dyslexic students and those of you who have wrestled with dyslexia, it's been in our society for, forever? For a long time. I think we're just now understanding the neurobiology of it. I'm learning a lot from the literature. And I believe that we need to make this a priority among all of our priorities. It does support our efforts around literacy. And so, I'm proud to bring this before the board this November. We're going to bring this every November, but it's got to be more than an annual resolution. We need to start really taking action. So you'll get some glimpses of what our thoughts are learning this year and also moving into the future. So I present to you this resolution in support of our district working on the issue of dyslexia.
All right, and I think by November you meant October for the resolution, but November for the, for a more
report.
comprehensive report. Okay, thank you. Any comments or, yes, Dr. Reed?
I just want to say I appreciate this resolution and also the efforts that the district is making to move forward to really address this issue, and I look forward to the report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2017-2018-05 in support of recognition of October as Dyslexia Awareness Month?
So I will move to approve.
I second.
Moved by Dr. Reed and seconded by Ms. Capps. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that passes unanimously, and we look forward to learning more about what changes are coming in our district in November. H5 is approval of a new classified job description, para-educator, early education and support. Mr. Torino.
Thank you, President Parker, board members, and cabinet members. I bring before you a actual new classified job description in regards to supporting the early childhood education that we have, and also our traditional kindergartners or any other early education programs. There's some very specific job duties that require a certain structure for our younger ones. And so this is a brand new para-educator job description that I'd like you to approve, or have any questions on why we're doing it. I'll take those questions now.
Any questions on this item?
Not a question, it's a comment. I'm glad to see this. It's important to make sure that we have a strong alignment with our early care and education and our K through 12 system. So I appreciate seeing this today.
Very similar to what we talked about earlier in regards to making it a preschool, early childhood through 12.
Yes.
Ms.
Yeah,
Capps?
I echo that, and I just was curious, is this for a specific school or?
No, it's for all of our early childhood education programs.
That's fantastic, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to approve this new job description, new classified job description?
So moved.
And second.
Moved by Mr. Paredes Ulloa, seconded by Ms. Capps. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Trina.
Thank you.
This brings us to item H6. This is second reading and approval of Board Policy 5117, Interdistrict Attendance. Dr. Wagenick.
Thank you, Ms. Parker, Mr. Matsuoka, and board. I bring to you the second reading of BP 5117, Interdistrict Attendance. The Santa Barbara Unified School District's practice of taking interdistrict transfers has varied over the years. We had the initial reading about a month ago, and I have brought this back to you with the requested change to the exceptions. In general, we will be limiting entry for students from outside districts. The board asks that we make a specific change to allow the students to remain in a school until they have completed the final grade offered in that school. That is 6th grade, 8th grade, or 12th grade. So at this point, I will open it up to questions and comments.
Thank you. And I believe we have public comment on this item.
Yes, we do. We have Brian Gobel.
All right, members of the board and staff, thanks for the opportunity to come in and talk about this agenda item today. My name's Brian Gable. I'm the father of Isabel Gable, who's a 9th grader at the Matt Academy at Santa Barbara High. And she's also on an interdistrict transfer, which is why I'm here tonight to talk about this agenda item. First thing I wanted to say is thank you for clarifying what I think is now the language in number 5. That will allow my daughter to complete her time at Santa Barbara High School, which is very important to her, myself, and my wife. But I did want to talk about the other exceptions because I have a 7th grade son who, as the policy currently stands, would not be able to follow his sister to Santa Barbara High. And there are really 2 comments I wanted to make about the policy as it's proposed today. One, I totally understand with the switch in funding that the school district needs to look at who's paid for when they come to a school within the district. It makes total sense. And I think that if you're going to do the cost analysis, though, you should also do the corresponding benefits analysis. And I do think that interdistrict transfer students probably provide some benefits to the school district that haven't been acknowledged in the proposed policy. One would be the sort of intellectual, cultural, social, and athletic enrichment. I suspect strongly that some of these students are among the most dedicated and interested in their respective schools. Their parents probably sought out the transfer to give them an opportunity to succeed, and I bet they're contributing very substantially to their schools and will in the future. The other thing is that I think the parents are probably among the most energetic supporters of the schools where their children attend. And so although they're not contributing tuition dollars per se, I suspect they're strongly supporting PTAs, academic and athletic foundations, and the like. And so I would respectfully request that a more detailed sort of cost-benefit analysis be done before this policy is finally adopted to look at the contributions that interdistrict transfer students make to their public schools, not just the costs associated with the switch in the funding formula. The last point I wanted to make was that the first policy did have a provision, it's number 6, that I think makes a lot of sense. I would like to see that added back in part because many parents, I suspect, picked an interdistrict transfer path for their older sibling, knowing, believing, thinking, / hoping that their younger student would have an opportunity to be in the same school with the older sibling for some period of their, in my case, high school career.
30 seconds.
So as this policy is currently written, that opportunity would be denied to the younger sibling. And again, for the reasons I've articulated already, I think there'd be good reason, and it'd be in the interests of the school district to let those younger students follow their older siblings in the same school. I'm not suggesting if they're 10 grades apart that they follow, but if they're going to be in the same school, they finish together or attend together. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Board members? Did you want to also give public comment? Yeah, okay, that's fine, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Nancy Weiss?
Good evening, President Parker, members of the school board, and Superintendent Masaoka. My name is Nancy Weiss. I'm the other Nancy Weiss, not the one that works for the school district, although we share emails regularly. This one's for you, this one's for me. I have a question I want to relay on behalf of the community that I've been hearing about this policy, and that is around academies. And I'm sorry I haven't read all of this, but it just struck me as I was sitting there that I wasn't clear, and I think the community's not clear what would happen if somebody's in the district or Santa Barbara High but gets into an academy at San Marcos or DP. So that's a question and a concern that I'm hearing. The other reason I'm here tonight is on behalf of myself, my family, in relationship to open alternative school. And it just struck me also sitting here that it's hard not to go back in time, and I know President Parker will recall this, that unfortunately back in 2011 or 10, sorry I don't remember the exact year, but tipping into basic aid really began a downward spiral for open alternative school. And it's a piece of history that I think is very important to acknowledge, and has a lot of bearing on the decisions you may very well be making within the next few months related to open alternative school. And at that time, I remember actually pleading, and people who know me know that I don't plead very often for things, to make an exception or some sort of alternative arrangement for open alternative school for a variety of reasons we can talk later about. But there sometimes are unanticipated consequences when we tip into basic aid that certain schools who have some, might be disproportionately affected, particularly when they can't recruit from their neighborhood. I know President Parker's nodding around this, and already have, very low they're a small school, and they have already, they're kind of a commuter school, and maybe a special case. So I guess I just felt like it was important to speak to that history and bring that back, since it's largely a new school board here, and we have our new superintendent. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. And were you wanting to speak again for, okay, thank you. Chris Mardonos.
Martinez.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't see the T. It looked like a D. Martinez.
Yes, ma'am. Hello, board members. My first time here, so a little nervous. But I came as my son goes to OAS, and he's part of an interdistrict transfer. He started there when he's in kindergarten. He's in 3rd grade now. We also have some little ones that we want to continue going OAS as interdistrict transfers. And we live out of the area, and OAS was one of the first schools we picked, just because we love their program and their willingness to do stuff outside of school. As far as field trips, wildlife, pretty much the whole spectrum is what we would like our kids to learn. So I'm hoping the interdistrict transfer revision doesn't impact our little one's future on trying to go there. As my wife and myself didn't go to OAS because we're pretty much a little older than OAS was first there, but we like a tradition of our whole siblings, our whole kids going there to continue that. And I did read number 5. So our little ones in 3rd, he'll finish 6th, but for the little ones prior to that, how impact is that going to be on them going to OAS, if there is an OAS, or etc. Just for future reference, I just hope you continue this program as interdistrict transfers, and hope you keep the school where it is, or if not, keep the school structure as it is. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just to clarify, first of all, that we're only talking about the inter-district transfer policy. And so this is not affecting transfers between our schools at all. So if you're at Santa Barbara High and get into a special program at San Marcos, for example, that will not be affected by 5117 because that's an intra-district transfer. And yeah, so that's different. And this is only about students coming into our district from outside our boundaries. Board members, any comments or questions at this point? Ms. Capps?
Hoping Dr. Wagner can speak to number 6. I think we're all relieved to see the change in number 5, and we discussed that last meeting, and not the strong desire by the part of the board to not sort of yank children out of a school where they're comfortable, as our speaker spoke to. But if you could speak to the rationale about striking number 6, I think that would help us all understand it better.
That came out of the discussion from the first reading, that, and that was my understanding, that the board preferred to have what is now number 5 replace number 6. And because if students are allowed to remain, fiscally, if students are allowed to remain in a school, say they're in 2nd grade, they remain through 6th grade, and then siblings start coming in, and then they're allowed to stay continuously through 6th grade. Essentially, our numbers of interdistrict transfers remain high, and because we are now in a community funding model, we have students from outside our community staying and with some families in for a long period of time, 10, 12 years.
And just to clarify also, the way number 6 was written, it became superfluous when number 5 came in. Because 6 was written with such that a student is already, the younger student was at the same school, because remember the original policy was that students were going to be sent back immediately. And when we suggested the change to number 5, that meant that we didn't need number 6.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you're already there, you get to stay. I was thinking more of incoming, allowing incoming siblings, because that's a piece we also grappled with. But yes, all students will be able to stay through 6th grade. Thank you, Ms. Parker.
Dr. Reed?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's challenging to not be able to have your child go to the school where you want them to go. And I think an effort, and that's where our hope is, that this policy will at least provide a pathway for students to come in, but also not to be suddenly just pushed out of a school, but the process be, I think, a little more humane and really thoughtful about the student and the families that are impacted. And I think it's a challenging situation that we find ourselves in going into basic aid and having to do this. So we're trying to find a compromise that's best for, at least that we feel that can be the best way possible to solve the situation and benefit everybody at hand as best we can. So I think I agree with the policy the way it is written.
So, I was on the board the last time it went through, and we brought this up the last time, just that, the last time in the middle of the recession, we sent students away immediately, and it was really important to the board over the years that followed that we not do that kind of thing again, which is why it was really important to me, and I think to the rest of the board, to change number 5 so that students could stay to the end of their current school level. Having said that, I would like to suggest a change to number 5. And that is because, particularly because we have a number of families from OAS here, and we don't quite know what's going to be happening with OAS, and we also do know that we have a number of transfers from, inter-district transfers from OAS. And so my suggestion on number 5 is that we say to allow the student to remain in the district until they have completed the final grade offered at their current school. If that's clear enough language to be sure that no matter what happens at OAS, those students that are currently our district students can stay through the end of the current grade level that is offered at OAS.
So, Ms. Parker, I understand clearly what you're saying, and that makes sense. How about to allow a student to remain in the district until they have completed the final grade offered in that grade span? Or
in their current grade span?
In their current grade span.
In the current grade span. Okay, that works.
I would suggest in the parentheses that we actually list the grade spans would be K6, comma, 7, 8, comma, 9, 12. So that people are clear we understand grade span, but a lot of parents wouldn't, so I think
because that allows us, if, for instance, let's say we had 4th grade became full at Monroe, and they're an inter-district transfer student who'd been with us since kindergarten, we'd find them space in our district.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Capps.
Yes, if you could speak, since this is the second reading, to the communication efforts. I appreciate the graph showing how many students this currently would impact, but just what kind of lead time, what kind of communication efforts. So, I mean, we know that this is a change that really matters to people in their daily lives and families, and I think softening that as much as possible with as much lead time and thoughtful communication as I'm sure is planned, but I think it would be helpful to express here so that we all understand the nature of how seriously we're taking this and what steps will be taken to communicate with those families.
Well, first step, so we've already begun that process. We sent a letter out to each family who would be impacted by the change, so our interdistrict transfer families were notified. Press release was put out, and some of our media outlets have covered that. I have received just 3 emails so far from parents inquiring. We've gotten some phone calls. So that's the first step. And then this is really, we're entering our season, gearing up for transfer season, our big showcase of high schools, et cetera. So throughout the next month and a half, we'll be putting that information out. We are speaking with our partner districts so that they're aware, and I know that Mr. Matsuoka has spoken with the superintendent, so I think we can probably give more detail to the board in written form so that you know exactly what we're planning for the next 6 weeks.
Thank you.
And I just have to share that I would love, and I know that other regions do this, but I would love to work both with our partner districts and our neighboring districts, so that if we could create MOUs, whereas if we have a set number of students that want to go from Santa Barbara to Goleta and Goleta to Santa Barbara, if it balances out, there's no reason why we shouldn't do that. We just have to do the work to make that happen. But it is, she's, so get together and
Our largest district, partner district.
for interdistrict transfers is Goleta. So there really isn't when especially when both are basic aid, but regardless, it just requires some thoughtful planning and also some policy making around the limitations of it, but it is something that we should be able to do on a limited basis. And so I hope that we'll look at that in the future. And I just want to reiterate for those who weren't at our last meeting that, we have lots of information on our website about basic aid, and you can see it from the last video. It is not a choice of funding. It is something that districts are based on the ratio of their student enrollment to their property taxes. So it's not something that we have a choice on. But when you are going basic aid, again, the way we are, the way all of our partner districts are, it is harmful to students and staff if we increase our enrollment, and that's why it is that we can't take interdistrict transfers once we move into that model. So with that, this is an action item on Board Policy 5117. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is that a motion to approve 5117 as amended?
As amended, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Sims-Moten, seconded by Mr. Paredes-Ulloa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, and we know you'll be getting the word out about that. This brings us to H7. This is approval of the California Academy Foundation Multimedia Arts and Design Academy, MAD, Memorandum of Understanding. Ms. Carey.
Thank you, President Parker, members of the board. You have there, and we have here on the screen, a copy of the MOU established between our district and the CAF here is the California Academy Foundation that raises funds to support the mission of the Multimedia Arts and Design Academy at Santa Barbara High School. I'll just highlight item D there that describes for anybody who doesn't have the background that the MAD Academy is an approved California Partnership Academy operated under the district's jurisdiction, and whose mission is to educate the whole person, inspire students to find their passion while acquiring professional media arts skills. Students are motivated and engaged through project-based learning and an integrated academic and media arts curriculum and experiential trips. The former version of this MOU had in fact lapsed, and so this is the updated and somewhat revised version of the MOU. I'll highlight some features of this and then be available for questions. The thing I want to point to that is probably most substantive is item I, which delineates the support that the MAD Academy receives, and the understandings that we have between the district and the MAD Academy Foundation and MAD Academy staff, as well as Santa Barbara High School staff, in terms of fiscal resources, which can take the form of personnel, staffing, in some in-kind kinds of support, and just really delineates what that is and also stipulates that that's something that will be annually adjusted. So the details there are in item I. I also want to highlight a couple other items as we, thank you, Mr. Rouse, scroll down, that may be new as we look at MOUs like this. One is item T, which is about intellectual property. And so that was something that was some new territory, and we had some really interesting conversation about what it means to produce intellectual property. I think that's kind of exciting. You've heard me up here before talking about CTE pathways and how we want our experiences to be, for students to be very real world. And so some considerations come into play as we produce real world products. And so I wanted to highlight that as something kind of new and in a way intriguing. And then also item U, something that I learned in the process of negotiating this MOU is the degree to which the Palucci Media Center is sought after as a space for rental. And that is by, production companies. It's one of the few facilities in the region that has the kind of technical setup that it does, that has a rolling door that you can get, say, automobiles in and out of to shoot auto commercials, things like that. So we have to take great care to make sure that we comply with civic use law and make sure that we make that facility, as well as all facilities in our district, available for civic use in an appropriate fashion, while at the same time protecting the very technical space and valuable assets, unique assets that are contained in that facility and are stewarded by the MAD staff. The other thing I would just say as an overarching comment about this, and then be available for questions or comments, is a lot of this MOU is really codifying what were informal understandings, sort of among either district or even school site staff or foundation representatives. So you'll see things in other items that I did not highlight that have a lot to do with just codifying existing practices and understandings. Questions or comments?
Ms. Sims-Moten.
Thank you for this report or bringing this MOU. I have two questions. So is this an MOU that we will have at all of our academies, such as BADA, so you will come and bring that back, or is it just the MAD?
That's an interesting question. Part of the impetus for this MOU is to ensure that there was equity. We talk a lot about equity and the differences between, although sometimes nuanced, equality and equity. And one of the driving factors for generating this revised MOU was to ensure equity with another academy who does have an MOU established with our district and whose MOU was approved by the board in the last school year, and that's Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy. So that has kind of opened up a conversation along your line of questioning. What is the role that these MOUs play? I am actually happy to say that one of the things that I think is really just an improvement in our practice is that through both of these MOUs, the one with DPEA and the one with MOU, it is stipulated that the district is sort of is owning the personnel in the form of the director and the leadership of those two academies. I will note the size and scale and scope of both of those two academies, which serve around 400 students. Give or take what's happening in a given year with enrollment and attrition. So they are our most impacted and our largest academies by far. I think a really great vision for the future would be to get to a place where instead of going the direction of adding a separate MOU for each one of our separate academies, even as they evolve, grow, and potentially proliferate, is actually moving to a place where we need an MOU less and less because we bring into the fold, into our own processes, ways of supporting our academies that are just in alignment with our practices, our established practices.
And my second question is maybe for Mr. Tay. So under the calculations, could you just expand a little bit on the loan payment, on where that's?
Yes.
I'm not sure of the year, but I know I was here. I would say it was probably back in 2009, I believe it was.
5 years ago. They made 5 payments.
Oh, that's true. That's good math. Okay, so 2012, we did a renovation in that area to the Matt Academy, and they wanted certain things, and we said to them, okay, there's money out there for you to go after, and they did. And this was a loan, and they made 5 payments of $165,000. And then when we were trying to bring equity between DPEA and the Matt Academy, this was part of that agreement. So there's 5 more years on this loan.
So is there does it have to be a match in any way, or they have to fundraise to make the loan payment? How are they making that?
They had to fundraise.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Capps.
So thank you for this. I see here on item H, it defines the number of students, but I'm noting that it doesn't get into the admissions process, and I'm just a procedural question. Does that live with the district? Is that, it doesn't seem as though it's part of this MOU, but as academies are sort of deciding their admission policy, where does that governance reside?
That governance across all of our academies has resided with our academies, but it's something that we are interested in and taking an active role in understanding and assessing and norming.
Thank you. Well said. Thanks.
And we look forward to hearing more about that in the future. Any other comments or questions on this item? I do want to give a shout out to the MAD Foundation board members and their director and the staff here. I know that this has been a multi-month process, and I appreciate the open conversation around it and the progress that's been made and sort of our understanding as we move forward with it. And it's great to have it finally on for action. I know that that's been an impatience. So we do need to take action on this. So is there a motion to approve the California Academy Foundation's Memorandum of Understanding?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Capps and seconded by Ms. Sims-Moton. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, normally with board practice at this time, we would take a 5-minute break, but given the length of the agenda, we will take that break after item I2. So at this moment, we're going to move to our report agenda, item I1. This is a presentation by County of Santa Barbara Commission for Women. And Ms. Capps, you're actually our resource person on this. I don't know if you noticed that on the agenda. I don't know if you'd like to call her up to the podium.
I would. So this is
them up to the podium.
Yes. This is thank you for being here, the Commission for Women. I was a previous member, and I stepped off it to be on this board. But I know how much work has gone into this effort, and I was proud to be a part of the sort of the seeds of this work originally. And we very much look forward to your presentation. So I think it's Ms. Everett who's going to be speaking, or maybe it's all 3 of you. Well, you yes. Thank you, Commissioner Everett.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the superintendent, president, and all the board members and the public. It's a great pleasure to address you. This is my first time, and I'm quite excited. My day job is I'm a professor at UC Santa Barbara for 20 years in the Department of Film and Media Studies. I am currently the chair of the Santa Barbara County Commission for Women. How many of you knew we had a Commission for Women? Okay, good. Not a lot, but good. So we were actually established. We were established in 1970 to promote and collaborate with entities to really address the well-being and equal status of women throughout the county. And the Board of Supervisors realized that this would be a good idea in 1970, and so we are still going strong. As you can see, we have several items here. So I just want to focus on these two items. So we are interested in facilitating, recognizing, and recommending programs to gather and disseminate information, to conduct public hearings, and obviously report to our bosses. But we also want to welcome you to go to our website and check it out. But one of the reasons that we're here today is we want to give you some information that we gathered on one of our important women in leadership programs, and that was to host a listening tour. So on March 9th of 2017, we had an event at the Faulkner Gallery downtown at the library, and the event was called Women Speak Up, and we really intended it to be just this listening tour, and as you can see, we had a really great turnout, and we were really grateful that a board member, Ms. Sims-Moten, was there to really represent and to speak up also. But what we were interested in, why we're here today, is that we also had a lot of young girls there, young women there, and we were really interested in what they had to say, and we thought that it would be a good idea for you guys to really hear some of the comments that they had to make. We were blown away, and we thought that you might be interested because they were really something that's important to these young girls, and we thought it would be really something that we could maybe talk about together. So on the event, March 9, we had three real, sort of key areas of concern, the primary concerns that the young girls raised, but we also had some general overview of concerns too. But mainly they were interested in immigration and deportation issues because, as you know right now, this is a really huge concern for folks. And these young girls were talking about it for their family. Teen dating and abuse and rape culture is really, really huge, and we were interested in what they had to say about that. And also they were interested in issues of racism, racial profiling, hate crimes, and etc. Some of the other concerns that came up with these young girls was issues of mental health that they wanted to be able to discuss. Also, they were very much concerned and interested in LGBTQ issues around safety and equality. They were interested in multicultural discrimination issues that different groups are encountering, and they really wanted to express that these are something that affect their learning, right? So we were interested in hearing them. Also, they had expressed this real need for more after-school activities because, they are recognizing that there's so much going on and they want to be with one another, but they have some really key issues that they thought the schools needed to be aware of. They also expressed the need for counselors that not only are concerned about their academics, but their well-being. So they wanted counselors who would be much more attuned to these other issues, so this holistic approach, right? Because there are other things that concern them and that are really important. But we really thought that if you could just hear some of the quotes, so we pulled some of the quotes out that the girls raised. And so they said that they live in fear of being deported and are afraid to go to school. And we know that that's a concern that you would have, that your students are afraid to come to school because we know in this current environment there's some real issues. Also, young kids and families don't want to come to the health clinic out of fear of deportation. And they really kind of struck us and really pulled at our heartstrings, and we were wondering, what we could do to address these issues. Also, on the increase of sexual abuse and rape culture, one of the young girls said that she was the only one of her roommates who hasn't been raped. Now, this one was a college student, but we also saw that the young girls in the public schools, in the high schools, were nodding and really recognizing this idea. And so they were talking about things like roofies and the ways in which these young girls are being given these incapacitating drugs, so that there's a real concern that they have. They also felt the need to address equal treatment for girls and boys in schools, for example, around physical education. One girl said it was really hot, and boys are allowed to be shirtless, but if a girl has on a halter top or spaghetti straps, they get called aside, and they're told that that's not proper. And so they were really concerned about fairness in treatment. They also expressed some ideas about sports. So there were things that they really felt needed to be addressed in terms of girls' access and equity. There's also this uptick in young people's genitalia grabbing, and I don't have to recite to you what that is related to, but there is this certain uptick that the students talked about that was going on, that we were really sort of shocked and horrified by. Also, they said that they needed school counselors to be much more versed in some of these other issues. They want to be able to discuss issues of race, sexism, immigration, and suicide, and also the juvenile justice system as well as drugs. So these were some real concerns that we really were quite surprised to hear this age of girls talking about. So we thought, after hearing all this, that we had some recommendations that we thought we could bring to the table. So we thought that we would like to suggest that the board could maybe think about how to be really proactive and intentional when thinking about these issues that affect girls, because they're vital to their education and to their sense of well-being in the community. So we really felt that there are a couple things that you might be able to do. On leadership and policy issues and broad awareness and participation in some of the legislative issues, if you can kind of focus on the ones that are affecting girls in particular, because that's where our mandate is, to look for the well-being of girls. To provide appropriate support for immigrant students and families, also to provide healthy youth education with separate parent-consented healthy body and sexuality modules, which Commissioner Peck will address in a moment. But we know that there's a way in which not all parents are on board for education around sexuality, but there could be modules that parents could agree to. Provide respectful behavioral guidelines at annual orientation sessions, so that there are these clear ways in which that boys and girls are told specifically what is zero tolerance and what's going to be accepted and what's not. Also, we wanted to look at the ways that we could strengthen the commitment to provide feminine hygiene products for girls, because it shouldn't be a tax on being a girl, and it's not just an issue of low income, but girls need to know that if they're at school, that they can have that issue taken care of and not have that stigma, as well as that sort of self-consciousness. Also, we thought that we could maybe talk about designating someone to be a lead on an ad hoc committee on gender parity for girls and boys in school, particularly around these sporting and these other issues around attire, and so that we can really take the lead and be intentional. Naming somebody makes sure that it happens. And then we also want you to consider us as a resource. We really want to work as a partner with you guys. So we really enjoy doing this listening tour. And now I want to turn it over to my colleague, Commissioner Peck, so that she can talk about the Healthy Youth Act.
Okay. And I have one handout that I didn't finish early enough to get put on the slide. So if you wouldn't mind passing that on, just to review what the California Healthy Youth Act is. Okay. So as Commissioner Everett mentioned, the California Healthy Youth Act became law January of last year, and there are a lot of schools, a lot of districts who are not yet in compliance with it. It's very comprehensive, and just for those who may not know what it is, it requires school districts to provide integrated, comprehensive, inclusive, medically accurate, up-to-date, unbiased sexual health education. And it's an HIV prevention. And STDs are way up. HIV prevention is becoming more of an issue. And the California Healthy Youth Act, if you've read it, spells out the need to provide pupils with the knowledge and skills to protect their sexual and reproductive health from HIV and other STDs and from unintended pregnancy, and to provide students with knowledge and skills to develop healthy attitudes concerning growth, development, body image, gender, sexual orientation, relationships, marriage, family. Again, it's very detailed, but it spells out requirements for districts to do so, and then to provide educators with the tools and guidance to ensure that students are receiving this kind of comprehensive, medically accurate, up-to-date education. So having heard the need when we had our Women Speak Up program, and having heard from so many girls about sexual assault and violence in schools and sexual harassment, we really started to think, what can we do, how can we help? And our mission, again, to collaborate with other organizations. Mary Ziegler, who's the assistant principal of Dos Pueblos, was wonderful to set up a meeting with the health teachers from all the schools to talk about California Healthy Youth Act and Assembly Bill 329 and how can we respond to this. And everyone's on the same page in terms of realizing that this is extremely important, that teaching these skills has an impact on achievement, has an impact on suicide, on mental health, and the health teachers want resources. As it is, we have excellent community resources who come in as outsiders to lecture. Pacific Pride or PFLAG or Planned Parenthood or AHA, Just Communities, all come in for various pieces of what's covered under the California Healthy Youth Act. But to have an integrated set curriculum is what the health teacher said we really need. We really need student-centered engagement. We need videos. We need tools that we can use. So we've begun meeting and talking to people about collaborating to make this happen. So Mary Ziegler, as I mentioned, assistant principal at Dos Pueblos, has said, how can we help with our school, because we have great video production and theater facilities in terms of creating video. We have a meeting set up for later this month to work on video segments. The Santa Barbara County Public Health Department, Dr. Charity Dean, has offered to be on our dream team in creating curriculum and reviewing curriculum and getting a program together. And she's a mother of 3 sons, and she's a doctor, and she knows how important this is. So she's offered her help. At UCSB, Professor Rebecca Rios, who's been studying this, has said, let me help, let me have students help in terms of reviewing curriculum and putting materials together. And all of the community partners, Just Communities and What is Love and AHA, have said we'd love to help with training for health teachers so that they really are equipped to do a better job in covering these areas. So we're looking to see, well, what curriculum is out there? The Advocates for Youth curriculum for sexual health education is being used in districts around the country. It was developed with funding from the Centers for Disease Control. It can be used by our district at no cost. And the good news is that right now, San Diego Unified School District, who has been using it, is putting the finishing touches on it to make it fully compliant with the California version of the California Healthy Youth Act, because our laws are a little bit more strict and more inclusive than other states. So we have set curriculum that we can adopt in pieces or all of it at no charge. We have the Dos Pueblos resources in terms of video production and theater and film treatment to work with students to get their stories and role models and peer-based education to create video clips that go along with the modules. What we're asking for from the board and from the district is for an active collaboration with us. So we're just eager to see this happen. We feel like there are great resources out there, and we want to do this in partnership with the district, with UCSB, and with the county health department to see that this happens. And we know that it'll have an impact on student achievement, on mental health, on suicide, on sexual assault. And there's good material there. It's packaging it and getting students involved in creating some videos and teaching tools so that we can use this throughout our district and then ideally share it with other districts. Any questions, comments?
Thank you. Board members?
I just want to thank you, and I also want to acknowledge Commissioner Marion Partridge for being here too. Thank you to the three of you, and just to reiterate what the offer of being a resource is a big one, because you all provide a lot of eyes and ears all throughout the county, which I think is also really important, and in so many facets of your lives, and bringing that to the table as you've already done. I'm glad that this meeting has already happened with the health teachers, and I'm sure that's just the beginning, or I would hope that would just be the beginning of ways in which we can collaborate.
Mr. Paredes Ulloa?
So I pulled up the bill, AB 329, and I see that was approved back in October of 2015. I was just wondering, maybe a good question for Ms. Carey, has this affected any of our health curriculum now, just because it was a couple of years ago, or has there been any movement on this that you've seen?
Can you hear me? There's always a little rigmarole. Okay, go to the sidebar. So as was stated, the health teachers across the secondary district, grades 7 through 12, have been coming, well, not 7 through 12, but those who have teach health curriculum in 7 and 8, and particularly at the high schools, have been coming together and collaborating around this topic, as well as several other topics that are not that either have or have not been prescribed by ed code and by legislation. So what's good about that is we used to have really variable kinds of partnerships and speakers and resources coming into our health classrooms, and that is much more of a normed thing. Certainly there is an increase in this particular attention to and treatment of these particular topics in the last 2 years, yeah.
Mrs. Wooten?
And I'm not sure who this question is for, but how does the Healthy Kids report inform this at all? Our curriculum, our health curriculum at all, the Healthy Kids reports that's taken? Do you use data from that?
Well, this is one of those areas where the curriculum overlaps with the work of student services. Each principal uses the Healthy Kids survey to make decisions about their site. I would say specifically in the student services realm, we use it annually. In fact, the assistant principals will be looking at it at the end of this month and looking for trends and issues that are popping up. And so that's one thing that we'll be looking for. I would say most notably for me, what popped out was the issue of sexual harassment and sexual assault, which we know is an issue, and how do we address that? My concern is that a week or two in a 9th grade health class is not sufficient to cover that, and so these are topics that we need to provide opportunities for students to have exposure to and talk about. So it is a big issue, but you asked about the Healthy Kids survey in particular. That's how the assistant principals use it and set goals for what they'll do at their sites.
Thank you.
Dr. Reed.
I just would like to thank all of you for coming and presenting today and bringing this awareness to the board. And also the idea of a curriculum that is integrated all of these aspects sounds really powerful in terms of really providing an impact versus a piecemeal kind of way of approaching. So I guess it would be interesting to find out, what that curriculum looks like, and I don't know if we can find out if from the nurses that met together, maybe did they say that there were specific gaps that they would like to see met that are not being met currently?
Well, you mean the health teachers? The health teachers?
Yeah, that you met with.
Yeah, what we heard from them was that they're having trouble scheduling all the outside speakers to come in and handle pieces, that it's not integrated, that they don't have set curriculum and they don't have teaching tools. So they'll rely on Planned Parenthood or Pacific Pride to cover LGBT issues. But then in terms of ongoing questions and student participation, it's, a speaker has come in maybe once and that's it. Yeah.
Thank you. And I have a quick question. Maybe it's for you, Dr. Everett. And you'd need to go to the mic to respond. And that is, I can get to your website at the county.org/CFW. Is there a detailed report on this that lays out all the results in a way that's more than just the PowerPoint that's available? When I look at the website, I can't tell exactly where that would be.
The website is a work in progress.
Okay.
We have been updating it, and
Okay.
and in fact, one of our commissioners has just given us some links to Dignity Health that has done a major sort of resource allocation and some links that we're going to be uploading. But yes, we can make that report available because we're still sort of finalizing it.
Yeah, I would love to see it. If you could just maybe let Mr. Matsuoka know get the link whenever it's ready and he can get it out to us, that would be great. So thank you.
We will. Thank you so much for that offer.
All right, we are now on item I2. This is recommendation regarding the future of open alternative school. Mr. Matsuoka.
In the board report, it's actually a fairly short report because we've been having a board conversation about this for probably the last 9 months. And so I guess it's with the degree of, I don't know, sadness that I have to bring this recommendation. I've spent a lot of time with these parents. I know some of you by first name because we've spent so much time together. And it's been a journey, at least for me in my 15 months. Right now, OAS, the data, it's struggling with its enrollment. And so the report's there. I think we have lots of public comment, so we probably should take that, and then the board can ask questions of me, of staff, and then deliberate.
All right, Dr. Reed, how many speaker slips do we have? 8. Okay.
2 additional later, just so you know.
Okay, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and close the speaker slips on this item at this point. So this is your last chance to get one in if you want to speak on item I2. So we can figure out if we need to change the amount of time allotted for speakers. But since I'm not seeing everybody standing up and running to it, we're going to go ahead and get started. And that's fine. You can go ahead. We see that there are a couple coming forward. And we can, with this number, we can go ahead and keep it at 3 minutes. And Dr. Reed, I will let you get started.
Okay, we'll start with Nancy Weiss, and then we have Natalie Napoleon, and then we have Gabriella Balfour Ritchie.
Thank you, Nancy Weiss, I'm back. I just have a quick question, point of order. I thought actually there wasn't going to be a chance to comment on the exact item, but only at public comment earlier, and now we're commenting now. So there's a little bit of confusion, and also we haven't heard the plan or report yet. So can I just ask a question? I understand there'll be a public hearing later as well after we hear the
Yes, this will come back to us
plan.
multiple
Okay.
times, but this, I don't think that you're going to, I think that the report that was available as on the agenda that you should all have been able to see online.
I did. Thank
Great.
you.
That's the report for tonight's agenda.
Okay.
And this is the time that we take comment on a particular agenda item.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I was the only one with that misunderstanding. Again, Nancy Weiss, first I really want to thank President Parker for making some suggestions even tonight on 5117. It's great to see that we're learning from the past so we can prepare better for the future, because there was a lot of pain and difficulty the last time we went into Basegate, as I'd referenced earlier. So my history with OAS was my family, my son in particular, was part of the school 2008 through 2014. And Superintendent Matsuoka, I just wanted to offer myself as a resource person as this issue moves forward. We haven't been in conversation in the last 9 months, but I've certainly been involved off and on over many years. Welcome to the district, I should say. So I'm here to listen and learn because I did read the report, but I'm sure there's a lot more behind the recommendation and maybe some thinking about the future and the plans for the values that the school represents, and also, of course, the families, most importantly. And mainly just offer my support to collaborate and, as this issue moves forward, because I understand this is not on your action item agenda tonight, but a discussion. And just also, by the way, I was looking back at the history and I couldn't find notes from the March hearing, so maybe a staff member could direct me to that. I did watch the video from February, so just quick observation. So thank you. I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you. Our next speaker, yes.
Hello. Hi, President Parker, board members, and Superintendent Matsuoka. My name is Natalie D. Napoleon. I am a coordinator at the Writing Center at City College, but my most important job is I'm the mum of Samuel, and he's a first grader at OAS. And I wrote a letter, I sent a copy to you all, and my husband's also a professor at City College. Our child's education is so important to us. And as I sat here tonight, waiting and listening to everyone, I read your mission statement, and I cannot think of a better school that fulfills that mission statement than OAS. It's committed to excellence. It empowers children to be responsible, ethical, productive, and diverse citizens. Now, I've sent you all my letter, and I just wanted to highlight the most important things I wanted you to note. That the location of the school has sort of been working against it for quite a while. It's located physically outside of the district, yet it's part of the district. We have to drive quite a way to get there, and that holds a lot of parents, prevents them from choosing OAS. I contend with that downward trajectory thing that is up there about OAS. We know that the numbers across the whole school district are going down, not just OAS. And I contend that we are a healthy, strong, vibrant school, fulfilling all of the mission statements that the district has. And so a proposal was made by Superintendent Matsuoka that we could start a new alternative school on the Munro campus. We don't need to start a new alternative school. We have a wonderful alternative school now through OAS. You know, if you put OAS on the Munro campus, you're bringing us back within the school boundaries, you're giving access to more students. One thing I didn't mention in my letter is OAS is one of the most diverse schools in the district. You know, you have a school on the east side that's 98% Latino. You have a Washington that's like 98% white. The reason I chose OAS and my husband chose it is it reflects the actual diverse breakdown of Santa Barbara. So, you know, please support a school that supports the real makeup of our community, that you know, prepares our children to be in a diverse and changing world. And, you know, work with us. We're happy to work with you. You've seen us here. We are fighting for our school. We love our school. Our son loves his school. I have not been able to tell him that the school may be closing because he loves it so much, and I don't want to upset him.
Thank you.
It's wonderful. So please think about keeping us open.
Thank you very much. We have Gabriella coming up, Balfour Ritchie, and I just want to call up Chris Martinez next, and then Jessica Engel, and then Gloria Liggett.
Just take a breath after that last one. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Gabriella Balfour Ritchie. I am a parent of a first grader at OAS. This is our second year attending OAS. For myself, my family, and many in this room, we wholeheartedly believe that OAS is a truly amazing school. What attracted us to OAS in the first place was their philosophy of educating the whole child, a holistic approach. What kept us is the amazing growth we have seen in our child. OAS serves a diverse group of students which truly reflects the community we live in. But the school diversity extends beyond race. We have students with many different beliefs and many learning capabilities. These differences and the celebration of them keep OAS vibrant, and our children are exposed to many wonderful experiences. OAS nurtures each individual student, helping them discover where their passions lie. OAS students also learn from an early point that they are members of a bigger community, as OAS students are taught to be service-oriented and in turn develop a real sense of responsibility. At OAS, creativity is nurtured and encouraged in every way possible. OAS has been a local pioneer in spearheading programs like the school gardens, collaborative learning, and restorative justice. I really cannot stress enough the gem of a school that the school district has. There have been talks about possibly moving OAS to the campus of Monroe. Though I would be sad to leave our current home, I believe that this could be the start of something wonderful for OAS. For starters, the school would be back in the Santa Barbara School District. Children from the Mesa and the West Side could have easy access. OAS back on an elementary school would attract young families. Our amazing teachers would have the support from the staff and the principal that are dealing with elementary school issues. OAS could be as successful like Goleta Family School is on the campus of Foothill School. Board members, I beseech each and every one of you, please be the board that makes OAS a success that we all know it can be.
Thank you very much. Our next speakers, we had Chris Martinez, Jessica Engel, Gloria Liggett, in that order.
Good afternoon, board members. Me again, Superintendent, President. I didn't write a script, but I'm just going to tell you from the heart. As I know, my son's a third grader at OAS. He's been there since kindergarten. I would love to see OAS stay on that campus. I believe that campus is a really good campus. He likes the interaction with kids at his school. He can pretty much knows all the kids at his school. I don't think other schools provide that as far as kids knowing different kids in each grade level and those kids interacting and playing with different kids in those grade levels. Other schools and other grade levels kind of stick to their own grade levels and own little social group. But OAS as a whole, everyone interacts with everyone plays with anyone, everyone knows everyone. As far as parents, same thing with parents. I believe the majority of OAS parents know each other. You don't have that at other schools. Other schools may be 5%, 10% of parents know other parents at that school. OAS has been beneficial to our family, and I hope OAS keeps going. As a question, to the board, what happens, unfortunately, if something does happen to OAS for those students that do go there, interdistrict transfers? Do they get shut out of the whole program as far as them trying to find another school, or what happens to those kids? That's it.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm coming here today actually from the Bay Area. I just moved here in June, so I'm new to OAS. And the reason I felt it was important to come tonight and to talk and to give you a little bit of insight from what we've experienced just being there a short time. Initially, we came to OAS because we had an unfortunate situation happen with a private school in town that the day before school told me that it wasn't going to be able to work out financially, blah, 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 blah. Those are other issues. I went to other schools in the district trying to find a school for my son. Most of them were full. I went to OAS because I knew of another friend that was attending, and when I entered into the office in tears, not knowing where to go with my son now being 2 weeks late to start school, I was welcomed with open arms. I was shown by teachers and staff members that I was okay, that my son would be okay. I chose OAS because I did not also want to go to a public school that had 300-400 children when my son was just another child. He comes from a Waldorf charter school in the Sonoma area. I worked in a Napa charter school as a farming student. I know how important it is for gardening in these children's lives, for community, and most importantly, support. I don't feel that this school, from the conversations I've had with the community, has been supported over the last few years. It was a huge success is what I've been told. And now here we are facing a possible closure to a school that deserves another opportunity. And I think it's this time that this district is given an opportunity to support this school again. All of the other educational, all the elementary schools in this community, you have your charters, which are special, but again, have waiting lists that are too long to get into. OAS provides a home for those who don't feel like they fit into a public school that is very one-dimensional. We are a diverse world, and we need different places for different people to call home. this school has given not only myself, but all of these people for the last 40 years a place to call home. And now looking back, if you look back at these families who have gone through OAS, I hear nothing but success stories about their children going on to college and becoming pertinent, viable pieces of society, people in society, changing this world. I don't want my child
30
to
seconds.
just be another kid in school. I want him to be seen as a child and embraced as a human being. I want him to have the opportunity to be taught from the inside out, not from the outside in. Allow these children to develop into the flowers that they are and to change this world that is becoming dark and scary into a bright future. Do not close the school, please. Thank you.
Gloria, and then we will have Lisa Kerwin, Allison Turkish, and Ian Holland.
Hello, my name is Gloria Liggett. I've been involved with OAS since before OAS. I was part of the parent group that traveled all over Southern California with Gwen Phillips looking at different kinds of alternative schools. Schools, not alternative schools in the like continuation schools, which sometimes people confuse, but alternative schools that we now call progressive schools. I went to a meeting not long ago. I taught at Antioch for a while, teaching in the education department, and I sat with another alternative school teacher that had been there for years, and we heard all these wonderful new things in education. They have this thing, you know, how kids sit in a circle and talk about their programs. We're going, you know, we always did that. And then they're going to get kids out into the woods, and they're going to learn about, you know, all kinds of things outside. And we said, yeah, we always did that. And then we're going to actually have like a garden and have food for the school. And yeah, that's what we always did too. We just didn't have this same educational jargon, and we called it something different. But it's what we've been doing. It's an important place. I was there as Gloria, now I'm there as Grandma Gloria. One of the parents I ran into with her kid downtown, little girl ran up to me and said, "Oh, Grandma Gloria," and I said, "Oh, hi," we hugged. The parents said, "Oh my goodness, are you Grandma Gloria?" And I said, "Yes." They said, "We've been telling her for 2 years she doesn't have a Grandma Gloria." So it's a place where you can have a grandma. I'm there. I'm there for them. So are other people. We go to a school play, and it isn't just the parents that are there now. It's people that have been there forever, since it started. We're still going to the school plays. We are a wonderful audience, and we support them. One of the things that I understand, things change. I've appreciated your coming to the school and listening to us. But I will also even go as far as to say I support the idea maybe of moving off that campus and being at a smaller, at an elementary school. I think that would be healthy. But the one thing that I really want to see is a board taking responsibility for transitioning not just the children, but the OAS community into that program, and not letting them be, oh, well, you can be in the lottery like everybody else. I think that it would really be a wonderful thing for a new school to have the parents and the kids and a community that already believes in this sort of education to be part of this new program. And I would like to see it be, as we were in the beginning, community decisions made by community. We have lots of educators, and we knew what we were doing then, we know what we're doing now. So I would support being able to really have you transfer these kids from one campus to the other, maybe not as OAS, but as a community.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Lisa Kerwin, and I've been a teacher at Open Alternative for the past 20 years. And in this deliberation process of deciding what to do with Open Alternative School, I would ask you to please continue to recognize and value the knowledge that families bring to all of our school communities, and especially we have just a fantastic students and family members at OAS. I believe it is important to take into consideration the commitment and investment these students and families have brought and continue to bring to our community, and the families who are currently attending there. And whatever the outcome, whatever the decisions are made, that these students and families are given a priority in what their choices are for the next coming school year. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Hello, Superintendent. Hello, board members. I am a concerned OAS parent. I have a bright, engaged, and enthusiastic kindergartner. His teachers are Maritza and Lisa. My background, I have a master's in education. I taught elementary school for 10 years, and I also worked in the Santa Barbara Public Library system for 10 years. So I have strong feelings about how children learn best, and there's extensive examples in pedagogical research that backs them up, from Anji Play in China to homework-free schools in Europe to no tests until age 10 in Japan. There's evidence that teaching with alternative methods compared to U.S. traditional methods is successful. As an involved parent, I researched and visited many schools, public schools, private schools, charter schools, and I visited OAS. I saw a campus full of happy children. I used to teach, nobody was biting, nobody was hitting. It was amazing. I saw children who were confident. They respected differences in other children. They had a strong sense of self. They took care of each other, and they took care of their classrooms. They took care of their campus, and everybody knew each other. In every single classroom, students were encouraged to be self-motivated and self-directed, to be independent thinkers. And that's what society needs. OAS, in my opinion, is an extraordinary school. I actually said if I were to design my own school, it would be a lot like OAS. Performing arts, art, music, PE, all those wonderful things that are incorporated all the time. It is not a cookie cutter school. It's not focused on testing and test scores. It's focused on learning, engaging. It's focused on love for themselves, those students, and for others. And that's an environment that is proven to be best for children. Too many parents in Santa Barbara are sending their kids to private schools. I don't even know if they know OAS exists. I ask you to please not take this public school away from the public.
30 seconds.
I ask you to support our school and the vision. I ask you to promote our program. Visit. Come play with us. Come learn with us. And spread the word. OAS is an amazing place. Thank you.
Thank you. After Mr. Holland, we have Lanny Evenstein. Evenstein. Evenstein.
Thank you so much. My name is Ian Holland, and I am a parent to a sixth grader, Julian Holland. He's been there since kindergarten. And I'll say very briefly that I am very happy with OAS. I'm a therapist in town. I've worked with some pretty great organizations. Someone mentioned some great other programs that are around, and I started thinking about the AHA Peacekeepers. I worked with AHA for about 3 years in town. Everyone's familiar with AHA, yes? I think I can safely say that almost every student that comes out of OAS, let's say out of sixth grade, is a peacekeeper, is the kind of kid that we're trying to train some of our junior high and high school students to be. Julian has a core group in class, and he wanted to tell you about it. Is that acceptable to the board to include my sixth grader here? Okay, can you tell about the core group, Julian?
Yeah, in core group, we can talk about our feelings and how our day was, and we can have appreciations or concerns. But like we either call it a rose or a thorn, or an appreciation or concern. It's the same thing. and then a STEM is a good thing and a bad thing. And I like it because we get to talk about our day. And recently, in our class, in Brian's class, we were talking about our feelings and like some people and some people's families died, so we were talking about stuff like that, and I felt like I could share a lot of things, and it felt good.
Tempted to rest on that, but is it possible to defer another minute to someone else, his teacher? No, can't do that. Thought not. I thought that would be pretty sweet. Okay, well, what I have to say is pretty tired, but I do want to say that OAS has obviously, I haven't heard a parent say, we don't care what it costs, we just want the school there. I think we're reasonable. Every parent I've talked to is reasonable. So anything we can do, we have a core, we can call it 70, but man, we've got a core of 70 that we can easily build with a couple of accommodations. I love some of the ideas I heard. I'm not going to go over them, but I think with a couple of accommodations, I think we could really work very well for the district. And I think we're a niche school in some ways.
30 seconds.
Thank you. And I see, I don't know what the numbers are on IEP and ESL students, but I have to think that all of those students are given the maximum chance that they can have. In an elementary school. And I have been concerned with the size of the school. I'm very satisfied that that Julian is learning to, relate to the adults as well as the kindergartners, and I'm very satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you.
See, he had the best.
President Parker, members of the board, Dr. Matsuoko. My name is Lanny Ebenstein. I thought that I would come and offer a little bit of historical background. I can recall when OAS was at Peabody School, and then when it went to Parma School, and then also when it went to La Colina during my time on the board, no less than 25 years ago, hard to imagine. And personally, I think that the idea at the time, and this was in 1992, was that La Colina was perceived as a temporary location, and temporary can turn into a long time. But I think that for a school in the Santa Barbara Elementary School District, particularly as you move into basic aid status, that it makes sense to be located in the Santa Barbara Elementary School District, and that Monroe is an excellent location. It's the largest physical plant in the among the elementary schools. It's almost 10 acres. And it's an elementary site. One of the differences between aspects of OAS is that it has never had a significant junior high program, and so I think that it being located on a junior high site is to some extent, I think that it would be better to locate OAS on an elementary site, and many years ago it started out on an elementary site at Peabody Elementary School. And I appreciate the comments of the parents and friends of the school who are here. I myself have had many friends who were students at OAS or parents at OAS, and there's certainly a strong commitment to the school. And at the same time, it's incumbent on the district to recognize the needs of all students. And I think that perhaps the better way to frame the proposal would be as a reorganization of OAS rather than a closure of OAS, because I do think that there are issues with respect to enrollment and the decrease that it's had, and the number of students who are from outside of the district that are unlikely to continue as time goes on, that indicate that the resources that OAS currently receives per student is greater than the resources that other elementary schools receive per student, and that's ultimately your primary concern in terms of you have to ensure
30 seconds.
Things don't have to be absolutely equal, but I think that you do have to ensure that they're more equal than they are now. So I think the proposal is a good step in the right direction, and that that it could really be a win-win situation to move a reorganized program to the Monroe Elementary School site. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's it? Okay, thank you. And Mr. Matsuoka, did you want to say anything before we start discussion, or?
Are we all done with?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's let the board have their discussion. I've been taking notes. I have some additional comments. I may weave them in, or depends how you guys handle it.
Dr. Reed?
Yes. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for coming here today. And also from the beginning, I think since February when we first started hearing about this as a board member, I appreciated the letters, the emails, the comments, the understanding, and the passion. I mean, I think the consistent thread across all people that have spoken is the passion and the love for this school, for the way we are really supporting the whole child. And I think what I really wanted to acknowledge tonight is the history that this school brings, to acknowledge that for 40 years it has been a part of our district, and that in the beginning there were 225 students in that school, and it was robust, and it grew, and it became a very well-known and well-thought-of school. Certainly, we know that and what we've heard is for various reasons, including the interdistrict policy, changes have taken place and impacted the population. But what I wanted to ensure that as myself as a board member, what I feel strongly about is that we need to really support all students in the district, that we need to look at all students and ensure that all students have opportunities, both academic or career, whatever they choose to pursue, and that we're supporting them in that endeavor. And I feel very strongly, I'm a past elementary teacher and also work in education, and so I really believe in the whole child approach. I believe in so many of the aspects that you discuss. I mean, and I think probably, though, we could probably see a lot of these activities are being done in the elementary schools here in the district as well. So I don't want to say that OAS is the only school. I believe other schools, and maybe just different classrooms are doing these different activities. But I also feel that obviously the passion and the caring and all of you making this effort for your students and for your children. And so that's why I'm on this board. It's not because I wanted to sit up here on this dais. It was because I feel really strongly about what we can do to support all students and to ensure that that can happen. I think the idea for Monroe, to bring the school into Monroe, is we have to also understand that schools have different cultures. And we also have to understand, and I think what I'd like to say is really understand and respect the differences between the different schools, and whether it's Monroe or whatever other school or whatever we end up doing, but they have their own, every school has its own culture. I mean, obviously OAS has its own culture. And so for this process to happen, and what I'm hoping for, is that it happens in a respectful way, that we're really good listeners, we're thinking about the process, what we can do to ensure that everyone can be heard and also be a part of the process. I think that's really crucial and really important. So again, I really appreciate, I heard you, and I thank you.
Ms. Sims-Moten?
I'd like to echo those comments. I don't need to repeat that. I'm in full agreement with those comments. What I wanted to add was also my appreciation for the parents who are coming out, and again, the friends of the school. And for me, I think President Parker said it in terms of thoughtful planning. You know, it saddens me that we have to come with this recommendation, but it's simply that recommendation. And so what that does is create an opportunity to discuss how we can actually keep the spirit of what happened. There was a call of action in 1975 that we needed a different place and space for our children to learn, and so that action came about. And so through the transition plan, through the discussion that ultimately gets us to where that decision is, that we do not lose the spirit of what it was in the very beginning, and how best to do that as school board members. And, you know, we had a study session today, and we were just talking about what is it about being an ambassador for the school is keeping the child center and most focused of our decisions, and especially when our decisions are difficult that we have to make. I look forward to continued conversation. There were words that were spoken in terms of collaboration. I'll do what I need to do in terms of that we know each other. We're willing to do what we need to do to make sure that the success of this program continues. It's going to look different, but how does that look without losing the spirit of why it was created in the first place? So I want to appreciate, again, to echo the comments of my board member here, and as well as the comments that were spoken, at the stand. And so I, for one, want to see this continued conversation, that we see the full spirit of this happening, and whatever that transition looks like, it is a transition that has to have a good plan, that we incorporate the comments that were spoken today, and so that in the end, our children win and our community wins as well.
Ms. Capps?
Thank you. Don't need to repeat my gratitude to all of the parents and the letters that we've gotten. It really are touched by them. I want to just take a moment to thank our superintendent, and I really appreciate the way that this report even laid out the thorough steps that he has taken personally since December of last year. And as a board, I can just tell you that he's really kept us up to date and involved with each step as this has sort of been moving forward. So I hope, even though this is brings a lot of emotion, I hope that the process is one that I feel that you all feel that there's some integrity behind, and the process continues. It says at the end of the report that this is a process that next there would be a public hearing, and then the board could. So this is a conversation that is continuing, and I just want to thank Superintendent Matsuoka for the diligence and the care that he has brought to this process up until now.
Mr. Paredes Ulloa?
As everyone's already said, I appreciate all the parents being here, all the supporters, former parents of students and former students as well. I know that this is a difficult recommendation to make for our school district, and I know that in a perfect world, this wouldn't even come up. Let's be honest, because it is, just the passion that we're seeing tonight from all of you is just so telling of the kind of culture that OAS does develop. And so what my hope is, just as my fellow board members have said, is that we can continue having a conversation, working together, collaborating, so that whatever decision just does come out, it is something that it doesn't feel like it's something slammed down on the families and on the staff and the faculty, because that is not something we want to lose. Again, I'm Santa Barbara native, born and raised in this school district, and the reason I came on this board was because I am proud Santa Barbaran, and I want to give back to to the same community that gave me so much, that gave my family so much. But I think part of that is really bringing people together and having those conversations, continue having those conversations. Again, I can't make any promises now, and I don't think we as a board can make any promises now, but again, having those hearings and continue having conversations, whether in front of you or behind the scenes, is going to continue to happen. And again, my hope is that it is a decision that comes down that we can really meet in the middle on. So let's continue working together. And again, I appreciate the spirit of collaboration that I've heard tonight.
Thank you. And I'll just add that it's kind of a cliche in school board world that, about being stopped in the grocery store and getting your ear bent on a particular issue. It actually doesn't happen that often. The person that it always happened to me with was Gwen Phillips. And so I would, walk into the grocery store and I'm like, oh, there's Gwen. Okay, I'm going to be here a little bit longer than I thought. But she was so passionate. She loved that school. She loved the school community. And I think of her all the time. She was just a tremendous advocate for students and made that, build that up to be a really special place with all of you. And with that in mind, that's been in my mind as the discussions have been going on the past year, watching the drop in enrollment, I do feel like there actually has been a big change in the discussion because of what happened this summer. We did not know that we would be going basic aid as soon as we are going basic aid until this summer. That was something, you know, the local tax conditions have just changed in a way that we did not expect. And with that, knowing that we were going to have to close to interdistrict transfers and knowing where that put OAS before, I mean, that really has changed the discussion. I know that you're down to about 70 students at this point. It's a lot fewer than you once were. I still see that as a large number of parents and families that want this type of progressive, constructivist education for their children. We do have, obviously, one charter school that focuses on the same theme. I know the communities are different, but as one of our parents pointed out here, Santa Barbara Charter is full with a waiting list. And so that means that there's not a space for students that want that. I very much keep that in mind. My youngest actually went through, we have an example of what the district has been thinking about at Adams School in terms of an alternative program on a mainstream campus. My youngest went through that. It's highly successful both for that program and for the school. It really built a neighborhood choice that was positive for students that were in the program and out of the program. And so I see that as a great thing. As Dr. Reed pointed out, every school community is different. I don't know where the process is with Monroe. I don't know that Monroe would be a good site for it. And I think that this is something, the idea of, I would love for there to be an alternative program for our students, for these families that want it. I think that's important. I don't know what that could look like, and I don't know where it should be. And I also don't know how long that conversation is going to take, because it's not something that happens fast. And so as everybody has said, we have, especially in the past week, gotten some really powerful emails, but we've gotten them over the course of the past few months too. Really appreciate them and have taken a lot of time with them. And again, as they've all said, you know, we just need to keep communicating as we go through this process and think about next steps to make sure that this kind of education is available for your children. And with that, I will give the mic to Mr. Matsuoka if there's anything that you want to add.
In the meantime, I thought I should schedule a meeting with the Monroe staff because this conversation started happening and they had no idea what was going on. And everybody was there at that voluntary staff meeting, and they had a lot to say because they're proud of their school. They're an independent school, and I learned a lot about their culture. And I think we have to be really careful with this idea of, well, let's just move OAS to another campus, because Monroe is a school that is serving kids, they believe, with the same values that you state. Like when I started stating it, they understood it, but they also were concerned that why are you bringing this when we already provide that kind of nurturing environment? So that just gave me pause in terms of process. I mean, due process means everybody. It's not just OAS. It's really the district. It's where are we going with alternative education? And then depending on what site we look at, there's a school to consider there. I believe Adams, the Montessori program, rose from within. So imagine a staff deciding we want to create our own alternative within our school. It's a whole different story when a program arrives from somewhere else. And I think you could appreciate that, OAS community, if somebody else came to your campus. So I'm always trying to get things done quickly, timely, but I think we have to be just really thoughtful with process. If we go too fast, we'll end up with an outcome that none of us are proud of. So I appreciate the input from the community. I've gotten to know quite a few of you. I see a lot of your faces, and it's been a good journey with you. It's been a hard journey, and I appreciate the way that you've listened to me over the last 9 months. I hope I'm listening to you. I also have a job to do. I have to represent the needs of the entire district. And so I appreciate the board's deliberations. So the next steps, we will schedule a public hearing, the next board meeting. That's part of the procedures. And then the board will give us a sense of direction about would the board be ready to take action November 14th, or do you want to continue the conversation? Okay.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to the end of item I2, and with that, we will be taking a 5-minute break. All right, we will go ahead and reconvene. At this time, we are moving to item I3. This is California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, otherwise known as CASP. The dashboard report, and this is listed under Ms. Carey and Dr. Ramirez and Dr. Onzoni.
Good evening. Apparently, I will be the one to go over the slide presentation with you. Good evening, President Parker, Board of Directors, and parents and community members that are still here. So in my role as Director of Assessment and Accountability this year, I'm here to provide a brief overview of the third administration of the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, otherwise known as CASP, which was conducted this past spring for the third time. It provides assessment data which supports all California school districts, including ours, in analyzing and mapping their students' academic progress in English language arts and mathematics. And then these results in turn provide an important trend line of student achievement data, which is and can be used to inform and guide a district's ongoing efforts in improving instructional programming. So the presentation of the spring 2017 results that I prepared include the spring 2015 and 16 results so that we can see the assessment results over time. Thank you. The PowerPoint presentation, thank you, will include, as you could see when reviewing the documents ahead of time, it will show the district-wide and grade level performance, school site performance, and the district-wide performance for some designated subgroups. Before I begin, I'd like to note that overall, the results do illustrate some bright spots in progress, as well as areas of ongoing concern, especially in light of variance in achievement across some of our sites, and as we look at achievement levels of some of our designated subgroups. In light of statewide averages, Santa Barbara students as a whole exceed the statewide achievement levels, but one caveat, it's not by very many percentage points. As we delve deeper into the results, we can see that our subgroup levels continue to speak to our continuing urgency of seeking out more and better efforts in providing assistance and support to those students. Okay, district-wide performance. And I'll go through this briefly, but please feel free to stop me at any point. Ask question. Oh, too far. Overall, district-wide, in English language arts, there's been a 3% growth from the baseline year, so 53% of our students are meeting or exceeding standards. The statewide average for 17 was 49%. A highlight is that grade 7 overall posted a 5% gain. Grade 8 dipped slightly, but it still exceeds the statewide average by 6%. Grade 11 regained some ground, and grades 3, 4, 5, and 6, while improving, this is one of our challenges, are performing consistently at between 45 and this year 48% in meeting and exceeding standards, but in ELA still slightly below the statewide average. Overall, district-wide in math, there's been a 5% growth from the baseline year. Yes? Oh, click it. Thank you. One more. Thank you. There you go. In math, there's been a 5% growth from the baseline year. Overall, students improved by 3% since the spring of 2016. Grades 3, 4, 7, 8, and 11 exceeded the statewide average, with grade 7 posting the highest growth, and grade 4, there we go, and grade 4 making a steady 3-year gain. Grade 5 continues to post the lowest scores yearly, with only 32% meeting standards. And something I want to add here is I've been attending meetings and reading the things that are coming up and the
conversations that are going on. The grade 5 achievement levels in math, statewide and actually in all of the 15 states that belong to the SBAC consortium, have had depressed scores in the 5th grade math. So there's a lot of discussion going on, and I thought I wanted to put that in context. Yes, we're concerned about our 5th grade scores, but I wanted to put it in context that it's not just Santa Barbara Unified. There is a conversation going on about why this trend is happening, although one of the people that we were discussing it with did say, would we be asking the same question if the trend was going up? Because we were questioning whether it was the test or not. At this point, some of the conversation revolves around the developmental levels of 5th graders and whether the conceptual and reasoning skills that are being asked of them at that time are appropriate. So just one caveat there. Okay, let's look at ELA, trends by school site. While overall our elementary schools' growth varies considerably, taken as a whole, the elementary population of students meets the statewide average of 49%. The disparity, however, is troublesome, with 6 of our elementary schools achieving at 33% or below. We have 3 schools that have made some great gains. Adams has made wonderful gains over the 3-year span, with this year 62% of students meeting and exceeding standards, and Franklin continues to show an upward growth. All right, if I forget to go, junior high, secondary.
Dr. Renzoni, let's just pause there. Go back to that last slide.
Yes.
I think it's in the narrative, but there's a connection with the one-to-one pilot program. I mean,
yes.
It was at, what was it, Adams, Washington, and Franklin. So, I mean, I would say that that's not the sole cause of those results, but I think we should remember that. And we're looking forward to the impact of having, it's more than 7,200 iPads. We're probably at 10,000 devices out across our district. And I think students experiencing those assessments on the device, the tablet, how you navigate those interfaces is going to help our students manage those assessments.
It was one of the first things that jumped out at me when I first looked at the results. I as a former principal at Roosevelt, I couldn't help but notice, what is the commonality there? And it was the one-to-one iPads is what I thought. I haven't been able to locate any definitive research. There's spots that say, yes, the iPads do help achievement, particularly in math at certain grade levels. So we'll keep an eye on that. But definitely, yes, I think it's in the end of the narrative. Okay, so we're secondary. Junior high. So junior high district-wide, all students exceed, again, the statewide average. The disparity among the sites at the junior high is not as wide of a disparity as at the elementary level, but does represent an almost 30% gap. La Colina continues to make steady gains, with 77% of their students meeting and exceeding standards. Goleta Valley and La Cumbre are making steady progress. Santa Barbara is our only junior high that's just below the statewide average at 48%. Our high schools, district-wide, again, all students exceed the statewide average by a few percentage points. The disparity among sites is not as wide as the elementary, but in this case, at the high schools, it's about a 20% difference. DP continues a steady 2 to 3% growth over the 3 years, reaching 70% this past spring. San Marcos experienced a rebound to 62%. Unfortunately, Santa Barbara declined slightly, and it has kind of remained static. It's remained static for the past 2 years. Our alternative high schools do test very small groups of students, so you have to take their results with a little bit of a grain of salt. Alta Vista has varied widely, but declined in the spring by 10% to 47%, and La Cuesta maintains it under 20%. And now we'll go to math. The picture's about the same. Taken as a whole, the elementary population of students meets the statewide average, 38%. The disparity, however, again is troublesome, with 6 of the elementary schools achieving at 33% or below. Adams again and Franklin again, along with Washington, have made the greatest gains. Junior high, district-wide, all students exceed the statewide average. The disparity among sites is not as wide as the elementary, but does represent, again, an almost 30% difference. With almost this mirroring of the ELA, La Colina continues to make steady gains. Goleta Valley and La Cumbra, 49% and 39% respectively, show trending upwards of their achievement levels. And unfortunately, Santa Barbara Junior High is trending a little bit downwards. And they, again, have missed the statewide average. Our high schools, district-wide, I like to keep saying this, all exceed the statewide average, again, by a few percentage points. DP maintained at 55%. San Marcos trended downward for the second year in math. Santa Barbara did go up to 35%. And again, our alternative high schools varied widely, and La Cuesta actually didn't even have a math reporting score. Our subgroup achievement, where our challenges lie. So if we look at it by race and ethnicity, switch my papers here. The wide disparity in achievement between the white subgroup and both our Hispanic, Latino, and Black African American groups has remained steady over the 3-year testing window at 40 to 42% on average. Neither subgroup has attained the statewide average, while both the white and Asian groups have exceeded the statewide average by approximately 40 to 44% on average. So as you can see there, we have quite a bit of work to do in addressing the achievement gap there. On our English language fluency, reclassified students obviously are doing a bit better. Well, actually, they're slightly exceeding the statewide average, which is very good. They did decline a bit, the percentage of students meeting and exceeding standards, from 54% in 14-15 to 51% in spring 2016. But only 6% of our students identified as English learners met the standards, which was a decline of 2% from last year. In math, once again, our reclassified students have held steady at meeting the statewide average for the past 3 years, but only 8% of our students identified as English learners met or exceeded standards, which again was a 2% decline from 2015. Our students in the socioeconomically disadvantaged subgroup, again, are struggling, while students in this subgroup in both ELA and math have posted some gains toward meeting the statewide average. The group is still about 37 percentage points behind the achievement of those students who are not identified in this subgroup. And I do not have a slide for special education. In this case, so I'm going to just explain it to you. The subgroup is identified as with disability. It does not make, I'm not giving you the breakdown of what disability, it's just with disability. So they did it with disability as opposed to students not identified with a disability. There's been little change in the percentage of students identified in this subgroup in meeting or exceeding the standards in each of the 3 years of assessment results. It's a pretty consistent picture, with only 10% of our students meeting or exceeding, who are in the subgroup, meeting or exceeding standards in both 10% in ELA and 8% in math, as opposed to 53 and 43%. So overall, the achievement gap at the elementary level, when viewed through the lens of achievement at individual sites, is wide and stubborn when looking at the results over the past 3 years in both ELA and math. While there are some bright spots of growth, most schools are posting percentage of students in the meet or exceeded range at consistent levels. So it actually came up in some work, some things I was reading today, that our superintendent of state instruction made a comment that, well, you know, we're staying where we were. And then people were going back and forth with, well, that's not a gain, that's, you know, we need to be moving forward. So we are consistent, but we're not, as you can see as you delve into the subgroups, we still have quite a bit to go. And I did mention in the final comments that we did have the one-to-one iPads at the 3 elementary levels, and so we need to take a look at that. I noted that grade 5, while trending upward, remains the lowest performing grade level in math, while grade 7 is the highest. And the achievement gap at the secondary level, when viewed through the lens of achievement at individual sites, remains when looking at the results for the past 3 years. So from site to site, there's still an achievement gap there. All junior highs except for La Colina achieve within 6% of each other, within 48 to 54%, with La Colina making the steadiest growth, 64% to 77%, meeting and exceeding standards in English language arts. 3 of the 4 junior highs range from 37% to 49% this year in students meeting and exceeding standards, and I don't have any more slides. La Cumbre has made steady growth over the 3 years, while Santa Barbara Junior High maintained the percentage of meeting and exceeding standards for the first 2 years, but declined about 3% in the spring of 2016. In looking at this and then also delving into the other tool that we will have, and is getting more robust, the dashboard, which will be helping us to look at not only the current status, the snapshot in time, but also the growth over time and many more layers of being able to look at our data. However, our subgroup data continues to point to a persistent achievement gap, in particular in terms of our subgroups, race, ethnicity, disability status, and English proficiency. And I would recommend that additional data analysis, particularly at each site level, through the lens of subgroups, can help to highlight and address specific gaps and needs at sites and at grade levels. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and I assume that everybody's up there for questions, right? Board members, any comments or questions at this point? I have some. So obviously, it's hard to show the data in every single type of permutation just because we could go on, and we were talking about Harvey balls earlier, but there could be lots of them at this point, and there are. One of the things I think it's important for us to be transparent about with our school communities and the families in our district is that especially if you are a student that is from a family that is socioeconomically disadvantaged, maybe an English learner coming into our district, or have other types of challenges in one of our subgroups, the outcomes can be very different depending on which school you're at. If you are not in one of our subgroups that has challenges, there really is not that much disparity between which school you go to. But I do feel like we need to, and it didn't show it on this way because we saw the schools overall, but a lot of what we're seeing there just mimics, La Colina scores are higher, they're not a Title I school. Dos Pueblos scores are higher, they don't have the same population that San Marcos and Santa Barbara does. They're close, but it's not the same. But we also see schools where the populations are skewed much more disadvantaged, and yet the scores have gone way up. And so I feel like we need to call that out. Families need to know we have an open enrollment policy if there's space. That if you're from a family that's going to have challenges, you should know where the best options are for your student. And so I feel like on our website, first of all, I want to get to a place where it doesn't matter which school you go to. I think that is so important. I know that's a goal for all of us. We need to get to a place where all of the schools are operating at the highest level that we see in pockets here in our district. That's not the way it is right now, and I think that we need to be transparent with our families. That honestly, so many times, I get frustrated with interdistrict transfer policy because it's the wrong families that I see here asking about where, I want to move my kid here, I want to move, and it's really not about what's going on in the classroom because their student is just educated in a way that's fantastic at every single one of our schools. It's the students with challenges. Those are the parents that should be here saying, this is what I think about your interdistrict enrollment policy, and you need to have space for me at that school because I can see that my student in this particular group is going to do better there. And so I find that that's a frustration with the interdistrict transfer policy because I just feel like the wrong parents are paying attention to it. So that's my soapbox. And I do hope that we will make it clearer on our website so that people can see subgroups at the schools in a way that's not hidden up at the state level, that we make it available here. Dr. E?
I would just ask Dr. Ramirez to maybe you could come forward and just share some of your perspective on this that you had mentioned earlier.
Sure. To the point of how the state is now measuring growth. Clearly, we know that schools offer much more than just the academics. It's about student well-being, it's about safety, it's about so many other things that schools offer and that our staff has been tremendous in providing. But nevertheless, the outcomes are the outcomes, and we need to take stock of them, take ownership. And in this case, much of what you see here, to me, is analogous to going to an annual physical, for example. If we use this as an opportunity to then leave from that event and put in place significant steps that then better our outcomes the following year, then we're being intentional, purposeful, and very deliberate about how to move forward. I think that's one of the pieces that has been lacking for us historically. This is a look back. This is a look back at a cohort of students that is no longer there. They are essentially now moving on to the next grade. So the challenge for us lies in how do we ensure that we have other metrics and other ways of measuring learning that really resonates with our parents and families, and that allows us to really be more actionable and be more deliberate. This will take some time to really see, but I can tell you that the work that we've engaged in the last few years will definitely make a difference. So what I can point to specifically, I'll point to this this chart here that explains the difference in achievement between students classified as English learners and those that are reclassified. As I like to remind parents, and in our ELACs and our DLACs, reclassification is a moment in time. It's a huge milestone, but it is not an endpoint by any means. However, it is an important endpoint or important milestone because it signals that if students reach a certain level of language acquisition and language competency, they fare much better. And this is just one way of signaling that. The question is, what do we do with this data? And what we've embarked upon the last few years around our elementaries is a lot of professional learning, because it's important for students to be in the right seats, but it's important also to make content accessible. So when we talk about equity and access, let's be really precise about what we mean. We mean access to learning, access to content, access to information. And we can only do that through smart and intelligent design of learning. So we have embarked district-wide, but to speak to the elementary in particular, on some initiatives the last couple of years that have begun to fundamentally change the way in which we engage student learning. Specifically, we've addressed it through focusing on literacy, with a strong focus on an onboarding of a balanced literacy design. We started with the writing workshop. That is something that has now elevated our writing and our output for students to a different level. Teachers are actively engaging in assessments that are curricular embedded, but that also present opportunities to really discuss where students are learning at a given point in time in very specific terms. Because if we simply rely on this data from year to year, again, it's like going to your annual checkup, your annual physical, and then hoping and wishing that the next year your outcomes are better, without a plan firmly in place about how to do that day to day that then betters those outcomes so that you know whether you're actually meeting your goals or not. So that is just one example. In addition to that, we have multiple schools now that are fully trained on guided language acquisition design, which is GLAD, Project GLAD, which is intended to provide multiple entry points through very deliberate classroom strategies for students that are still acquiring language. And at the elementary, I would maintain that it is all of our students that could benefit from increasing their academic language, especially in the domain of, in any domain, but in particular, one of the fundamental shifts has been in the area of math that has become so much more language and literacy dominant. It is no longer just about mathematical fluency, or what we can recall as being mathematical fluency, particularly around algorithms. It's no longer about knowing multiplication facts. It is much more than that. It is that and then some. So why we focused on language and literacy as a district-wide focus is because we see a huge overlap. And it is not something that has just started as a result of these assessments, but rather has already been a couple of years in the making that has gained greater traction in the last probably 18 months.
Thank you, and I just appreciate that you can sort of clarify and to make it transparent the work that you are doing currently to address the challenges that we are facing. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mrs. Moten. Yes, and thank you again, Dr. Ramirez. And it could be for anyone. Just to go to your point about having the physical, and so once you get to that physical, and these are the things that you need to do to hopefully have a better year when you come back. So are those plans or those strategies part of the site plans at each school? Okay, so they're included in that piece.
Yes, there's two things that will emerge. It's actually part of our LCAP, which looks at it very broadly, and it's absolutely referenced in that document. We've gone through great lengths to align LCAP with our single plans, and our single plans aren't, they're great in terms of providing big goals and a general overview, but our schools have gone one step further and have established school implementation plans where they really define an instructional focus and talk about what students are expected to produce and how those outcomes trace back to staff practices, school practices, district practices, and what kind of metrics we're going to use along the way. Now, part of that, admittedly, is acknowledging that sometimes we don't have the right metrics and that we have to go seek them out. That is where there has been a lot of shifting and changing in terms of our mentality around how to act in a way that is more proactive as opposed to being reactive. So those I think are the pieces that are coming together in a very focused way, and it's very distributed. Staff and particularly teacher leaders are invited to partake in informing those and then developing very nimble plans that allow staff and school to reflect on their practices more frequently.
And then the last question that I had, so just looking at the numbers, so the numbers that are, I think it's on page, by our subgroups, are those unduplicated numbers? I think it's 15, slide 15. That unduplicated number versus the socioeconomically disadvantaged, are those unduplicated numbers?
So if by unduplicated, if you mean, they actually fall into different categories.
Okay.
So it's possible that students may fall into multiple categories,
Okay.
yes.
Any other comments at this point? Mr. Paredes Ulloa.
Just quickly, I want to say how much I appreciate the real culture that's being built in the district to really look at these as diagnostics and not just an end evaluation, like this is your final grade and this is it and you failed or you did well, but it really an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to really look at our practices and improve them. I feel that we're working towards more of a growth mindset, and I really appreciate that as opposed to just being punitive to our schools and our teachers and our students for low performance. So I just want to say thank you for that.
And if I could just add one point to that, that is very much in keeping with how the state is moving and trending. We want to ensure that we understand that our kids don't have the same starting points. In fact, upon point of entry, whether it's in PK or in TK or K, they already come with very different experiences and both academic, social, and personal experiences to our schools. But it's a fine balance between acknowledging that growth needs to happen and also establishing a healthy sense of urgency about the fact that these are real kids and real lives.
And I don't have the big piece of paper in front of me with the calendar, but obviously reading literacy is a huge focus of the district. And we are going to be seeing getting a literacy update, and I don't know when that is. Do you guys remember?
We're working on and developing that, and it'll either be at the end of this month or potentially in November. I know Mr. Matsuoka and a few colleagues won't be here for this next meeting, but it will be forthcoming within the next couple of board meetings for certain.
Okay, so it's soon. It's super timely, so great, thank you. And if there are no other comments or questions on it, we're going to move to item
Thank you.
I-4, which we have public comment on. This is discussion of high school voter education and first reading of Board Policy 6142.3, civic education, and that is Ms. Carey.
Good evening again. I'm actually really excited and proud to be able to present to you, the board, and to our community what our efforts were in this inaugural campaign, pun intended, to register and pre-register our young adults to vote and to participate fully in our democracy. There's been a lot of a lot of attention around this in educator circles, but also just in the public sphere. And so for our district, the person who headed up our efforts and planned with me, but really did the bulk of the execution, was our social studies coach, Helen Murdoch. So I'm going to let her present the details of our efforts, and then you'll hear from me again.
Good evening. I don't know which clicker thing. Oh, good. So the background is that this year, in fact, very recently, you can see that the Secretary of State decided that we should have a high school voter education week. And so we weren't even aware of it until Laura Capps brought it to our attention. And so we quickly put something together so that we could have our 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds pre-register, which is a law passed by Hannah Beth Jackson, our local senator, which is really nice. And then we could register our 18-year-olds. And one of my concerns, and I think everyone's concerns when we were setting this up, is first we were asking our teachers to all of a sudden do something quickly. I think they had about 2 weeks' notice to do this. We picked our social studies teachers, 11th grade and 12th grade. And it turns out some of our 11th graders are only 15. So they just kind of hung out and heard the information. And we realized they could do it next year. But that we wanted to make sure that students didn't feel pressured to do this. We made sure we messaged out to parents and to students and teachers that there are a number of reasons that kids might choose not to register: their citizenship status, religious reasons, and just because they don't care. And we didn't want to say, if you're going to do this and you're a citizen, come over here. We wanted to really make it comfortable for kids in the classroom to hear the information and to know that it was okay, that that no one was going to call them out and say, you're not a citizen, you go over here, and these other kids are going to do this. So I was in most of the classrooms that did it. I think there were about 60 classes that did this process. And actually, I think we have the numbers. Yeah, so there's the number of teachers that were doing it, but it's also about 60 classes. And the teachers were great. They would say, they went through all the information. We gave them a PowerPoint presentation that they could give to the students the day before or the day of that talked about why you want to vote, or the history of voting in the country. And we gave a flyer that had links to all the different political parties, the 6 parties, to make sure they really understood, what does it mean if I register as an American independent as opposed to being an independent voter, because they are very different. So we want to make sure that kids understood that. But teachers tended to say, if you are choosing to register, or if you are eligible to register, you may do so now, and if not, go to one of these news sites and read on your iPad. So it was not clear who in each classroom was registering and who wasn't. So we don't have numbers, because I wasn't about to say, raise your hand if you've registered. We didn't want to make anybody uncomfortable. But it was great. We had some Goleta City Council members come and visit at Dos Pueblos. Roger Aceves and Michael Bennett both came out and talked to classes and answered questions for kids. That was fun. And then at Santa Barbara High School, we had Laura came, and then also Ellen and Sarah and Susan, the women from the League of Women Voters, and I believe both of you are going to speak. So it was great to be able to take people around and have them see this in action. You know, the kids were actually, some of them were excited, especially when I pointed out if you were going to be 18 by November 6th or 7th and you lived in the city of Santa Barbara, that you would get an instant gratification and you could vote. And so that sort of got some kids pretty excited, especially over at La Cuesta. They're like, I can vote in 6 weeks if I just fill this form in? Yeah, you get to vote. You get to actually do this. So I think that was fun for some of them to see there's this immediate thing that's taking place. And do we have one more? I think it went really well, especially for a last-minute organization. And we're going to do it again in the spring at San Marcos because they're on block schedule, so not half of their students haven't done this yet. And they'll have more notice, and we will have done it once, and so that'll be nice. I think one of the big changes I would make is that Voter Education Week is actually 2 weeks, and I picked specific days for each school so that we could have people going to visit, and it didn't always fit right on the day I picked. So I will not control that next time. I will let the teachers decide when in that 2 weeks would work best for them. But I just hope every teacher does it next time. I think a lot of teachers didn't quite get the message or didn't realize how much we wanted them to do it. So I think it'll be all of them next time. And that's it.
Just want to give appreciation again to Helen for taking up the leadership mantle on that. That was a lot to project manage on a short timeline and at a busy time of the school year. And we are both here for questions if you have any.
Ms. Minnesota.
I don't have a question. I just want to thank Board Member Capps for bringing this to the attention. But I was also thinking when I heard about it, you know, oftentimes our kids are 18 and they're voting. They don't have that pre-education that is so needed that you get when you drive, right? You have this driver education. So I was glad to see this, and whether people took advantage or not, but there was this opportunity to really know what you're doing as opposed to I'm 18, I just go vote, and not have the background to do that. So I appreciate that as well.
And we do have public comment on this. Would you want to go ahead and take that first before we say, okay? Dr. Reed?
All right, but I just want to say one thing too, is that I appreciate the work that the district did in jumping onto this so quickly, because obviously it wouldn't have happened if they hadn't have taken it up when they did. And so that's the sign of it, expert faculty. I know you've done a lot of great work. So I appreciate your jumping in and getting it off the ground. So we have 3 public comments. We have Sarah Mayani, and then Susan Horn, and then Ellen Kokinda.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sarah Mayani, and I just wanted to voice my brief appreciation since this has gone on a long time, I realize. But I just wanted to point out in the mission statement, the goal to empower students to be responsible, ethical, and productive citizens, and how this initiative, I think, is a perfect way to help do that. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who helped make this happen. Thank you, Helen Murdoch, and I appreciated seeing some of it in action and look forward to it happening again in the spring. So every September and April, the final 2 weeks from now on, hopefully this will continue. Thanks.
And I know that Susan Horn is not here. She wasn't able to stay. But my name is Ellen Kokinda. I'm a resident of Santa Barbara. I was really happy to be able to connect on this issue and be able to observe the classroom. Helen made it super easy for the teachers. She knew that, again, there was kind of a last-minute request, and she put together a great presentation. And I got to observe John Beck's classroom, and he did such a fantastic job. Made it really approachable, was very conscious of the issues around privacy, which, you don't think about these things. I came in thinking, oh my God, this is going to be such a great opportunity. Let's get everybody involved. You realize these things are more complex. And I had a really profound experience when I turned 18 and got to vote. When I turned 18 in September, got to vote in November. I think that you have to learn it, civic engagement. You have to learn how to do this. So I would certainly, I look forward to supporting in any way possible, rolling this out again more robustly in the spring across the schools. Happy to help in any way, shape, or form. And then, honestly, there are so many different ways that you can incorporate how to think about civic engagement in the classroom. And one of the things that constantly comes up are mock campaigns. And at one point, Sarah and I were talking, and I think one of your teachers at Santa Barbara High wasn't necessarily into the mock campaign because we have so many real life examples going on all the time, and why not get involved? So I think if I could put one more suggestion out there is to really look at what's happening now, what's happening in your city. I'm an urban planner, so I'm really, there are plenty of things to identify and lots of different issues as we saw throughout different presentations tonight. So thank you very much. You have phenomenal teachers, and I was really excited to see the opportunities for all the students, both 16 through 18.
Thank you. Ms. Capps.
I just wanted to add the praise here. This was really a trifecta experience for me because we, as board members, our job is really to be the voice of the community, and I was made aware that that the law allowed and actually encouraged voter registration on our campuses, and that we weren't necessarily doing so kind of months ago from a few friends, and then Sarah really brought it to my attention by coming to the meeting, and so then to take it to you all and to Ms. Carey and to Helen Murdoch, you could have just. You were very excited. You could, some schools they put up a table and have the League of Women Voter Volunteers sort of do it, and that's great, but you really went like full force and having it be part of the very valuable classroom time. I just appreciate it, and that's why I wanted to see it myself and to be able to go and see the way that it was thoughtfully explained, and even the parties, they hadn't quite. I hear you on the timing because the professor that we sat in on, they hadn't gotten to the part of government class to sort of talk about the parties, but here these students are trying to pick which party they're in, and I can see that would be a very wasn't that way in my family, but I can see that would be a very confusing process. And he even said, it was kind of funny, he said, if you do decline to state, just so you know, you're going to get overwhelmed with, you're going to get a lot of material, you're going to get it from everybody. And I thought that was a good point, because it's sort of anyway, but I think this is really important. And to, again, Sarah, thank you, and for also connecting it to our mission statement. The studies all show, and we know this, but I'm just going to say it, that when people vote when they're 18, every indication will be that they're not just good voters from there on out, but they're actually more active participants in society and civics. And you can get kind of emotional about that experience that we're actually facilitating right there and then in the classroom. And it's a wonderful thing that happens, so thank you.
Not everybody knows this, but Helen was my master teacher when I was a student teacher in social studies. So it was an auspicious alignment of the stars, and we were very excited to not just have this happen, but to really own it, and to make sure that we don't just own it this year, but I'm sorry if there are any confusions. We want to combine the presentation with also the public comment, and on the heels of that, the wake of that, also give a first reading to an amended board policy, which I think we have. Do we have? Yes. And it's a small, but we feel profound amendment. And now I feel even more affirmed than it's in recommending the amendment to Board Policy 6142 on civic education. So what you'll see here is an addition of a key sentence in one of the final paragraphs. I'll read the sentence leading into it. To develop a sense of political effectiveness, instruction should develop students' understanding of the importance of civic participation in a democratic society. And the proposed addition is, schools are encouraged to facilitate the registration and pre-registration of eligible students to vote in conjunction with biannual high school voter education weeks as designated by the state of California. So again, going beyond allowing and really just saying this is something that should be happening in all our schools on a regular basis. So we'll be bringing that back for action, pending any comments or questions.
Mr. Paredes Ulloa?
Just something that I would appreciate adding in there would just be something about the choice the students have behind it, because it's just saying encouraging eligible students, but even as you know, some of the comments as we have gotten around this is it can be offensive to some students, to some parents. So I just want to make sure that it's very clear in the language that says this is an optional thing, not just for the schools and the teachers to participate in, but also for our students, regardless of their background and or you know, any beliefs.
I appreciate that insight. I'll make that adjustment.
But we actually need some wording. So what kind of wording are you thinking there? If instead of eligible students, what are you thinking?
Or facilitate the option?
Or the opportunity
The opportunity to, for those students wishing to register, pre-register.
So here's a possibility, because what you did to me was not just encourage, you did facilitate. And no matter what they decided to do, you facilitated. And so I would suggest changing it, given Mr. Paredes Ulloa's suggestion, to schools shall facilitate the option to register and pre-register eligible students to vote. So that's a couple of tense changes there. Did you get that all?
I think we got it, but we were missing I feel like we were missing the opportunity piece on that.
It was schools shall facilitate the opportunity to register and pre-register eligible students to vote in conjunction.
We did have the shall debate coming into the meeting.
Shall facilitate the option. The opportunity.
Registration, pre-registration of eligible students, or maybe just flipping it, facilitate the opportunity for eligible students wishing to register or pre-register. I think that's something that I would.
Could you repeat that again?
Okay, so schools are encouraged to facilitate the opportunity for eligible students wishing to register or pre-register.
Wishing. I wish.
So the reason I prefer shall to are encouraged is that regardless of whether or not a particular classroom chooses to do it, or a teacher or a student participates, school administration needs to, in my opinion, facilitate it. They need to come forward. And so I'm worried that if we just say schools are encouraged, that's a little bit too vague, and that while we have these particular people here, it will happen, and when they're not, it won't, which happens anyway. But that's my concern, because I still feel shall encourage doesn't mean that anybody, or shall facilitate does not mean that anybody must participate. It's about making sure administration is putting everything in place to give them the option.
Can I make a brief suggestion? Sorry, as a former history teacher.
Yeah, Mr.
Along with what you suggested.
I don't think your mic is quite on. Just it is that
Need to get
rigmarole.
closer to it?
That's better. Yeah.
Okay. Why not just add the word interested in front of eligible?
Interested in eligible?
To facilitate the registration and pre-registration of eligible or interested eligible students.
Yeah, that's a
rather
nice
than-
addition too.
Yeah, than
the
adding
wishing and the opportunity.
right.
I'm better with that.
Right, so there's a couple of minor suggestions there, and you can wordsmith it. Is it okay if it comes back on consent, but just remember to take a look at it to be sure they got it just right? Okay.
I just double checked that, yes, we'll bring it back that way.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And it's fun, I think I get to, that's been on the future agenda items list for a long time, so I get to put 2 strike-throughs today. And that brings us to I-5. First reading and sunshining of California School Employees Association, Chapter 30. It's Chapter 37 proposal for successor contract negotiations with the Santa Barbara Unified School District. Mr. Torino.
Thank you, President Parker, board members, Mr. Matsuoka, and cabinet. This is an agenda item in regards to our negotiations with our California School Employees Association, Chapter 7, our CSEA. First off, I want to apologize for bringing this so late. They actually gave it to us in spring. If you see the date, that's also high time for our hiring. So this continued to slip down my list of priorities to bring to the board, so I apologize for that. The recommendation is that the board review this, and we'll bring it back for public hearing at our next board meeting.
Great. Moving on, if there's no questions or comments, we'll move on to I-6. This is also Mr. Chirina. First reading, sunshining of the Santa Barbara Unified School District's proposal for successor contract negotiations with the California School Employees Association, CSEA, and its Santa Barbara Chapter 37, so essentially the flip.
Yes, it is our version of what I just presented to them, of what they presented to us, and our response to that.
Okay, and finally, also Mr. Chirina, I-7, first reading, sunshining of the Santa Barbara Unified School District's proposal for successor contract negotiations with the Santa Barbara Teachers Association. Mr. Chirina.
So we had the public hearing on this earlier. This is our response to the Santa Barbara Teachers Association's initial sunshine proposal for negotiations for this year.
Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That brings us to J on our agenda, returning to consent items designated for discussion, and we do not have any tonight. K, coming events. Anything going on that we need to?
Well, the school wellness.
Is your mic open?
I'm looking at Meg because the school wellness council summit is October 18th in Buellton, countywide, and everyone is encouraged to come. I've been the last couple of years, it's really a good convening of everyone who's involved in school wellness, from teachers to nutrition directors, administrators, et cetera. So it's a good place to be, and we do have Supervisor Joan Hartman speaking at the end of the day.
Great.
Thanks.
Anything else to note at this time? Future agenda items. I do have one that is related to BP and AR 5132, and it's actually Exhibit 5132, Dress and Grooming, which I don't know necessarily, the exhibits don't typically come to the board, but I want to note that while the BP and AR language is fairly gender neutral, the exhibit is not, and there are some things that are just flat out outdated. And so I would appreciate it, not necessarily that this comes to the board, but maybe this is like a Friday letter at some point when you have time to review 5132 Dress and Grooming, bring it to 2017, think about gender issues and some of the things that are coming up in other districts right now, and really seeing what we have here and the differences between what's expected of our female students and our male students as you think about how it should be worded in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. If I'm able, I am set to bring forth another group of board policies.
Mm-hmm.
If I can get that done in preparation for the next board meeting, would that be acceptable?
That's fine. I mean, we don't necessarily approve the exhibits, and so it's.
You just want the exhibit, okay.
I would like to be able to get an update that you've changed. Take a look at BP and AR 5132. I didn't see language in there that was, it's really about the exhibit, the specifics. The language looked fairly neutral to me, but it's the exhibit that I think it's a staff job to change, and I would just like to know that that's happened. Dr. Reed?
Clarification on that. Where is this located?
So it's, if you look at our district website, and under board policies, so if you're in governance, and then you go to policies and regulations, Series 5000 is the students section, so you can, Command or Control F and just look for dress, and it will pop up to 5132, and it's all listed there, the BP on dress and grooming. It's in English and Spanish, the AR on dress and grooming, And then it's, every now and then for some of our board policies and administrative regulations, they actually attach an exhibit which really lays out the details of, what a school principal is going to be presenting to their staff and how they're going to be interacting with students. And that is true for this one, for the dress code. So you want to look at the exhibit 5132 dress code. Look at it all, but the exhibit in particular is where you'll see some outdated language. Times have changed, clothing has changed, and then there's just, I know that there's a lot of concern about things like spaghetti straps and things like that, maybe administrators need to really think if that's something that is truly an issue or something that is really just affecting our female students for no good reason. So, anything else on future agenda items? Okay, if not, we will be meeting again on October 24th with a skeleton crew. We will be down, will all board members be here for the 24th? Okay, so all board members will be here, but I know that a number of staff will be away for, on district business in other locations. But we'll be moving forward, and we will see you Tuesday, October 24th. And with that, if there's no objections, I will adjourn the meeting. Thanks.